I don't know if there's any... Are they called channel members? No, that's not the word. Anyways, people who have your subscription subs, yeah. I don't know if there's any subs listening who have access. Oh right, this is going on YouTube, whatever. Hello. Just waiting on the ads to finish. I'm just scrolling through my pocket Pokemon while I wait. Looking at all the stuff. I really don't like special art Wigglytuff for the latest set, that Shining Revelry. It is uncanny valley. What am I obtained from the shop? Oh, I got Stardust. You've acquired new theme deck list and its cards. You can use a list you acquired to build this deck from the battle screen. Decks and theme deck lists. The one deck I was battling, they kept kicking my ass. Is it this one? It wasn't. I don't know. Oh well. Wait. I get the cards? Oh my gosh, I didn't know that's how that worked. Okay, so Love, with the new Pokemon thing, you can acquire this little shop token that you can use to purchase a deck, pre-made deck. I thought it was one of the blueprint ones, you know, where it's just like a rental deck. It's not. You get all the cards in the deck. What I just said, I don't know how to say it again in a way that is better. No, so I bought a deck that I had a shit ton of cards for already. If I knew I was gonna actually get the cards and not just get like a rental deck, then I would not have picked that one. Oh man, I'm mad now. Gosh darn it. Can I get another token thingy? Like, how do I get those? Apparently I get like a month before the shop expires, so... This is not fair. There was no explanation, or if there was, I didn't read it. Yeah, but you get the actual cards. You don't just get like a rental deck. So I got a bunch of cards I don't need. Well, I mean, I think I had like 3 new cards. I'm really sad now. I don't even know how I acquired that thing. Yeah. But what quest? Use pack stamina to open 5 booster packs. It's the EX starter deck missions, and there is no more. So sad. I'm gonna read the news, see if it actually says it. Starter deck missions. EX starter deck missions have been added. Completing one of the missions will let you get one of your choice of 9 decks. You can get one of the EX starter decks to use in battle. Ticket you get by completing one of the missions. Deal ticket event. For details, please see the missions screen. You can get one of the decks shown below by going to the shop screen and consuming a ticket you get from completing one of the EX starter deck missions. I mean, at least I didn't pick Beedrill. I already have that one. unmuted. I'm just upset. And I'm trying to read, but it doesn't actually say, because it says starter decks, and I just, again, it doesn't explain that you get to keep the cards. Yeah, it doesn't say that. It's... What are mics hot? I know, and I'm complaining. I'm not saying anything offensive. What's wrong? Oh my gosh. I didn't realize anyone was actually in the chat, though. I just figured this would show up on the YouTube. Let me open my Twitch. I'm sorry. I'm just vibing while it's... I did. I'm so sad. To open my not TikTok. Gosh darn it. Well, I hate the fact that Twitch doesn't have a T. I don't know. I keep opening TikTok every time I open Twitch. Try to open Twitch on my phone. Okay. Now I can see the chat. There we go. Now I can see the chat. Yeah, no, Cathis uploads, or Hero uploads these videos to YouTube, so anything that shows up in the recording will end up on the YouTube, so I have to kind of be alert on what I say, irregardless, so I'm good. Okay. We were trying to read stuff. For a second, I forgot. I always feel like this book should have, like, a ribbon, but it never does. I don't know. There we go. That's there, so I can see if anyone messages. Take my glasses off so I can see the pages. And try to remember where I was. I thought I got to the end of the chapter, but... I did. Right. Chapters are different here. Hold on. The sock puppet has book noises now. Sorry. Just the casual. Just 3 hours of pages. Books are nice. Okay. Hard to do that flip. I am disappointed. I mean, it's not like I'm missing out on cards that I'm not gonna get anyways. It just, it would have been easier for... Because I had 29 days to redeem it as well. So what I could have done is I could have waited to the end and then seen what cards I didn't have, because they have EX cards and rare cards in their decks, and I could have then waited and used it on, like, because throughout this month I'm going to be collecting from that Shining whatever, and I could have at least used it to finish filling out any cards I missed, but now I've used it, and now I gotta hope that I don't accidentally get doubles. Or, because at the end of the month they do that thing where you have to get, the special flares they've been doing. I could have waited, and then if they had a flare for a Pokemon that was in one of the decks, I could have redeemed it and saved a whole bunch of hassle. So, I'm irritated, yes. But I'll get over it. It's just a game. Why'd you ask? Okay. Yeah, it's whatever. It's not like I'm ever gonna put money into it. I think I open it twice a day for a couple minutes, except when they release the new packs, they throw those battles out. I do not really battle other people. It's just not my thing. Unless they force those quest things, but whatever. And the NPCs are weird. Like, there was one time, a couple of times it happens where, like, you think the NPC will do something and you'll die, but the NPC just decides not to do it, and it seems pretty obvious. Like, I could have been killed in one battle, but because I had, like, a rock helmet on, and because it couldn't it's like the NPC lagged out and it decided not to attack with the one Pokemon and retreated it, and it was like, what the hell? And then I won because it was dumb. But I get it's difficult to program, and it feels like every deck that they put out for their little training battle things is like they hand programmed it, because some battles you do the NPC stuff, they'll do certain things, but then other battles they won't. Like the recent one I've noticed, specifically the deck that has you're battling that has like the Jigglypuff, Wigglytuff, and the Bidoof. There, that's what it's called. For some reason, it's like obsessed with healing. So if it has a Pokemon out and that Pokemon only has like 10 damage on it, it'll use like its Jenny healer, or like, and it's just really weird. It just like overheals ridiculously. Or I had put it to sleep and it decided, and it couldn't attack that turn even if it was asleep. It's just sleep was a side effect of one of the attacks I did. So the Pokemon was put asleep, but that didn't stop them from putting energy on that Pokemon, and it also didn't really affect anything, but it decided to use the Jenny, or not Jenny, the Joy, there we go. The Joy thing, which, because it heals 30, but it has a side effect of removing status effects, so it wasted the heal for no reason. It's just like obsessed with heals. Anyways, sorry, going off on a rant. Gulliver's Travels. We're still in Lilliput. He has recently stopped the other kingdom's invasion of Lilliput by walking over the dividing oh my god, the channel that separates that island from I forgot the name of their capital. And he collected all the boats and brought it over. And now he is kind of overseeing the diplomacy between the country, the king of Lilliput, and the other nation. And because he's on the side, quote unquote, of Lilliput, the other nation is trying to like find a peace agreement, but at the same time they don't want to lose their autonomy. They don't want to become a vassal state or anything like that. They're trying to negotiate. But of course, because the current kingdom he's residing in, he's there and he's assisting them, they're being kind of obnoxious about it. Like they're pushing their limits. And there's also a little bit of a subtle plot going on where one of the advisors of the king doesn't like him because of reasons. So the king is becoming more and more suspicious because Gulliver refused to, I forgot what it was. He wanted him to do something like war-wise, and then Gulliver refused, so now the king's mad. He was like, he didn't want to get involved. So that's kind of the political turmoil, and it feels like it might be one of the instigating reasons why he's going to end up leaving Lilliput, if not just being a freaking giant in a world that are tiny people. I think it said the average Lilliputan is like 6 inches tall, is what they were saying. So it's a while ago, but Chapter 7, V11. The author, being informed of a design to accuse him of high treason, there we go, makes his escape to Blefuscu. His reception there. So Blefuscu, whichever, is the nation that was seceding trying to negotiate with Lilliput. So there's that. And I think there was something about the nation that he was residing in and the nation across the waters. It was supposed to be like a nod to the political turmoil of his time between France and Britain and their issues and stuff, because France was constantly threatening to, I can't remember if it was because France was constantly threatening to invade Britain or vice versa, one or the other, and he was making the whole book is essentially satire. Anyways, into the story. Before I proceed to give an account of my leaving this kingdom, it may be proper to inform the reader of a private intrigue which has been for 2 months forming against me. I had been hitherto I had been hitherto all of my life a stranger to courts. I thought I saw a chat move. Okay. Uh, no, I saw that one already. But I think it just showed an update saying that the chat scrolled down. That's caught my eye. I try to kind of pay attention if I see a little movement in the screen for that, which is sock puppet's a little distracting, but it's fine. Anyways, I've been here hitherto all of my life a stranger to courts, for which I am unqualified by the meanness of my condition. I had indeed heard of and read enough of the dispositions of great princes and ministers, but never expected to have found such terrible effects of them in so remote a country, governed, as I thought, by very different maxims from those in Europe. While I was just preparing to pay my attendance on the Emperor of Blefuscu, a considerable person at court, to whom I had been very serviceable at the time when he lay under the highest displeasure of his Imperial Majesty, came to my house very privately at night, in a close chair, and, without sending in his name, desired admittance. In a closed chair. Oh, okay. So, like, I'm imagining what he means is, like, either a carriage or one of those pulley basket things. You're gonna use the sock puppet distraction. Are you saying you're gonna go to work with a sock puppet and just, like, when someone's talking or when you talk, you're just gonna move the sock puppet? I wonder if that would help in meetings to keep people distracted. A big sock puppet with googly eyes, and you talk, but you like move the sock puppet hand. Or especially now with remote work, you can just have the camera up so you're not even in frame. It's just the sock puppet in the office chair, just doing the little talky thing. I'm sorry, I bet people would pay more attention. Exactly. You can't send a sock to HR. What are they gonna do with it? Oh my god, I don't know, this escalating to the point where, like, you get socks confiscated and they just have a collection of sock puppets and you just keep coming up with more names. Socko, Sockington, Woolly, I don't know, I've run out, I can't. I'm not saying I'm not trying to start a coup. Socko, Sockington, and Mr. Sockingsworth wanting unionize. The best part though is if you did do that and you had one sock, they're like, okay, it's the second one. You're like, they're like, oh my gosh, she's doing it. But then a third one would arrive and they would be very confused on how that sock is there. He's like, he's only got 2 arms. What's going on? Oh my gosh. Okay. Soccer wants unionize. Oh, their slogan can be "No sock lost in the jar." Oh no. Okay, gotta focus on reading. The chairmen were dismissed. Yeah, okay, so chairman. So that means he was being carried in a chair. That's what I was suspecting. Very privately at night in a closed chair, and without sending in his name, desired admittance. The chairmen were dismissed. I put the chair with his lordship in it into my coat pocket. The holy sock needs a space to pray. This feels really like this. And then any socks with holes are a part of the holy sock empire. Anyways, into my coat pocket, and giving orders to a trusty servant to say I was indisposed and gone to sleep, I fastened the door of my house, placed the chair on the table, according to my usual custom, and sat down by it. After the common salutations were over, observing his lordship's countenance full of concern, and inquiring into the reason he desired I would hear him with patience, in a matter that highly concerned my honour and my life. His speech was to the following effect, for I took notes of it as soon as he left me. "You are to know," said he, that several committees of council have lately been called in the most private manner on your account, and it is but 2 days since His Majesty came to a full resolution. You are very sensible that Skyresh Bulgalam, Galbet or High Admiral, I can do this, Admiral, why am I having trouble with the word? High Admiral, has been your mortal enemy almost ever since your arrival. His original reasons I know not, but his hatred has increased since your great success against Blefuscu, by which his glory as Admiral was once obscured. This is like the Orchard all over again. This lord, in conjunction with Flimnap, the High Treasurer, whose enmity, what, I am having a day. I think I'm just tired. Give me a second. I'm flirting. Whose enemy... I can do this. Yeah, they do. They demand the acknowledgement so the Holy Sogs can have they have their regular time. Enmity against you is notorious on account of his lady Limtok, the general Lalcon, the chamberlain, and Balmuff, the grand judiciary, have prepared articles of impeachment against you for treason and other capital crimes. The preface made me so impatient, being conscious of my own merits and innocence, that I was going to interrupt him, when he entreated me to be silent, and thus proceeded. Out of gratitude for the favors you have done me, I procured information of the whole proceedings and a copy of the articles, wherein I venture my head for your service. Articles of impeachment against Quinbus Flestrin, the Man-Mount. They call him Quinbus? They call him Quinbus. Whatever. What? His name, isn't it Gulliver? I'm confused. They just made up a name for him? That's really weird. Anyways, Article 1. That the said Quinbus Flestrin, having brought the imperial fleet of Blefuscu into the royal port, and being afterward commanded by his imperial majesty to seize all the other ships of the said empire of Blefuscu, and reduce that empire to a province to be governed by a viceroy from hence, and to destroy and to put to death not only all of the Big Endians exiles, but likewise all the people of that empire who would not immediately forsake the Big Endian heresy. He, the said Flestrian, like a false traitor against his most auspicious serene imperial majesty, did petition to be excused from said service upon pretense of unwillingness to force the consciences or destroy the liberties and lives of an innocent people. Article 2. That whereas certain ambassadors arrived from the court of Blefuscu to sue for peace in his majesty's court, he, the said Flestrin, did, like a false traitor, aid, abet, comfort, and divert the said ambassadors, although he knew them to be servants to a prince who was lately an open enemy to his imperial majesty, and in an open war against his said majesty. Article 3. That the said Quinbus Flestrin, contrary to the duty of a faithful subject, is now preparing to make a voyage to the court of the Empire of Blefuscu, for which he has received only verbal license from his imperial majesty, and under color of said license does falsely and traitorously intend to take the said voyage, and thereby to aid, comfort, and abet the Emperor of Blefuscu, so lately an enemy and in open war with his imperial majesty, aforesaid. Anyways, there are some other articles, but these are the most important, of which I have read to you in abstract. In the several debates upon this impeachment, it must be confessed that his majesty gave many marks of his great leniency, often urging the services you had done him, and endeavoring to extenuate your crimes. The treasurer and admiral insisted that you should be put to the most painful and Hmm. Ignominious death. By setting fire to your house at night, and the general was to attend with 20,000 men armed with poisoned arrows to shoot you on the face and hands. Some of your servants were to have private orders to strew poison juice on your shirts and sheets, which would soon make you tear your own flesh and die in the utmost torture. The general came into the same opinion, so that for a long time there was a majority against you, but His Majesty resolving, if possible, to spare your life, at least bought off the chamberlain. Upon this incident, Reldressel, principal secretary for private affairs, who has always approved himself your true friend, was commanded by the emperor to deliver his opinion, which he accordingly did, and therein justified the good thoughts you have of him. He allowed your crimes to be great, but that there was still room for mercy, the most commendable virtue in a prince, and for which His Majesty was so justly celebrated. He said the friendship between you and him was so well known to the world that perhaps the most honorable board might think him partial. However, in obedience to the command he had received, he would freely offer his sentiments. Excuse me. That if His Majesty, in consideration of your services, and pursuant to his own merciful disposition, would please to spare your life, and only give orders to put out both of your eyes, he humbly conceived that by this expedient justice might in some measure be satisfied, and all the world would applaud the leniency of the emperor, as well as the fair and generous proceedings of those who have the honor to be his counselors. That the loss of your eyes would be no impediment to your bodily strength, by which you might still be useful to His Majesty. That blindness is an addition to courage by concealing dangers from us. That the fear you had for your eyes was the greatest difficulty in bringing over the enemy's fleet. And it would be sufficient for you to see by the eyes of the ministers, since the greatest princes do no more. Oh, thanks. Do me the mercy and gouge my eyes out. How much I would appreciate that. This proposal was received with the utmost disapprobation by the whole board. Bolgalam, the admiral, could not preserve his temper, but rising up in a fury, said he wondered how the secretary durst presume to give his opinion for preserving the life of a traitor, that the services you had performed were, by all true reasons of state, the great aggravation of your crimes. The same strength which enabled you to bring over the enemy's fleet might serve, upon the first discontent, to carry it back. That he had good reason to think that you were a big Indian in your heart, and as treason begins in the heart before it appears in overt acts, so he accused you as a traitor on that account, and therefore insisted you should be put to death. The treasurer was of the same opinion. He showed to what straits His Majesty's revenue was reduced by the charge of maintaining you, which would soon grow insupportable. That the secretary's expedient of putting out your eyes was so far from being a remedy against this evil, that would probably increase it, as is manifest from the common practice of blinding some kind of fowls, after which they fed the faster and grew sooner fat. That His Sacred Majesty and the council, who are your judges, were, in their own consciences, fully convinced of your guilt, which was a sufficient argument to condemn you to death, without the formal proofs required by the strict letter of the law. But His Imperial Majesty, fully determined against capital punishment, was graciously pleased to say that since the council thought the loss of your eyes was too easy a censure, some other way may be inflicted hereinafter. And your friend the secretary, humbly desiring to be heard again, in answer to what the treasurer had objected concerning the great charge His Majesty was at in maintaining you, said that His Excellency, who had the sole disposal of the empire's revenue, might easily provide against that evil by gradually lessening your establishment, by which for want of sufficient food you will grow weak and faint and lose your appetite, and consume in a few months, neither would the stench of your carcass be then so dangerous when it should, by which for want of sufficient food you will grow weak and faint, and lose your appetite, and consume in a few months, lose your appetite and consume in a few months. That is weird wording, by which for want of sufficient food you will grow weak and faint and lose your appetite and consume in a few months. In this context, and consume in a few months means death, I would assume. I've never seen the word used that way. Anyways, neither would the stench of your carcass be then so dangerous. That's what the blips are. I'm seeing ads popping up. That's what's catching my eye. Sorry. Neither would the stench of your carcass be then so dangerous when it should become more than half diminished, and immediately upon your death, 5 or 6,000 of his majesty's subjects might, in 2 or 3 days, cut your flesh from your bones, take it away by cartloads, and bury it in distant parts, to prevent infection, leaving the skeleton as a monument of admiration to posterity. Thus, upon the great friendship of the secretary, the whole affair was compromised. It was strictly enjoined that the project of starving you by degrees should be kept a secret, but the sentence of putting out your eyes was entered on the books, none dissenting except Bolgalam, the admiral, who, being a creature of the empress, was perpetually instigated by her majesty to insist upon your death. In 3 days your friend the secretary will be directed to come to your house and read before you the articles of impeachment, and then to signify the great lenity and favor of his majesty in council, whereby you are only condemned to the loss of your eyes, which his majesty does not question you will gratefully and humbly submit to, and 20 of his majesty's surgeons will attend in order to see the operations well performed, by discharging very sharp-pointed arrows into the balls of your eyes as you lie on the ground. My God. I did not remember this part in Gulliver's Travels. I have to your prudence what measures you will take, and to avoid suspicion, I must immediately return in as private a manner as I came. His lordship did so, and I remained alone under many doubts and perplexities in mind. It was a custom introduced by this prince and his ministry, very different, as I have been assured, from the practice of former times, that after the court had decreed any cruel execution, either to gratify the monarch's resentment or the malice of a favorite, the emperor always made a speech to his whole council, expressing his great lenity and tenderness as qualities known and confessed by all the world. This speech was immediately published throughout the kingdom, nor did anything terrify the people so much as those I found a word I don't know how to say. One moment. I've got to look this up. Formal expression of high praise, often a speech or piece of writing that warmly celebrates a person, thing, or idea. Muted. Encomium. Okay. Such old-timey words. Nor did anything terrify the people so much as those encomium of his majesty's on his majesty's mercy. Because it was observed that the more these praises were enlarged and insisted on, the more inhuman was the punishment, and the more innocent the sufferer. Yet as to myself, I must confess, having never been designed for a courtier, either by my birth or education, I was so a judge of things, that I could not discover the lenity and favor of this sentence, but conceived it, perhaps erroneously, to be rather rigorous than gentle. I sometimes thought of standing my trial. Okay, there is an asterisk that does not look like it is political, so... Gulliver thought of standing his trial, so this asterisk, but was deterred by the apprehension that his enemies were sufficiently powerful to decide the court against him, without regard to his innocence or guilt. Bolingbroke wrote that if he had the least reason to hope for a fair and open trial, he would have awaited the result, but he knew that powerful enemies had resolved to pursue him to the scaffold, and therefore he fled. I sometimes thought of standing my trial, for although I could not deny the facts alleged in the several articles, yet I hoped they would admit of some extenuation. But having in my life perused many state trials which I had ever observed to terminate as the judges thought fit to direct, I durst not rely on so dangerous a decision in so critical a juncture and against such a powerful enemies. Once I was strongly bent upon resistance, for while I had liberty, the whole strength of that empire could hardly subdue me, and I might easily with stones pelt the metropolis to pieces. But I soon rejected that project with horror, for remembering the oath I had made to the Emperor, the favors I received from him, and the high title of Nardak he conferred upon me. Neither had I so soon learned the gratitude of courtiers to persuade myself that His Majesty's present severities acquitted me of all past obligations. At last I fixed upon a resolution, for which it is probable I may incur some censure, and not unjustly, for I confess I owe the preserving of mine eyes, and consequently my liberty, to my own great rashness and want of experience, because if I had then known the nature of princes and ministers, which I have since observed in many other courts, and their methods of treating criminals less obnoxious than myself, I should with great alacrity and readiness have submitted I should with great alacrity and readiness have submitted to so easy a punishment. But hurried on by the precipitancy of, what does that word mean? Another weird word. I lost it. There it is. Precipitancy. Precipitancy. Rashness or suddenness of action. Matters were taken out of his control by the precipitancy of the commander. Rashness. Action. Okay, so rashness, which is funny because he also uses the word rashness. Whatever. But hurried on by the precipitancy of youth, and having His Imperial Majesty licensed to pay my attendance upon the Emperor of Blefuscu, I took this opportunity, before the 3 days were elapsed, to send a letter to my friend the secretary, signifying my resolution of setting out that morning for Blefuscu pursuant to the leave I had got. And without waiting for an answer, I went to that side of the island where our fleet lay. I seized a large man of war and tied the cable to the prow, and lifting up the anchors, I stripped myself, put my clothes, together with my coverlet, which I carried under my arm, into the vessel, and drawing it after me, between wading and swimming, arrived at the royal port of Blefuscu, where the people had long expected me. They lent me 2 guides to direct me to the capital city, which is of the same name. I held them in my hands till I came within 200 yards of the gate, and desired them to signify my arrival to one of the secretaries, and let him know I there awaited His Majesty's commands. I had an answer in about an hour, that His Majesty, attended by the royal family and great officers of the court, was coming out to receive me. I advanced 100 yards. The Emperor and his train alighted from their horses, the Empress and ladies from the coaches, and I did not perceive they were in any fright or concern. I lay on the ground to kiss His Majesty's and the Empress's hand. Excuse me. I told His Majesty that I was come according to my promise, and with license of the Emperor my master, to have the honor of seeing so mighty a monarch, and to offer him any service in my power consistent with my duty to my own prince, not mentioning a word of my disgrace, because I had hitherto no regular information of it, and might suppose myself wholly ignorant of any such design. Neither could I reasonably conceive that the Emperor would discover the secret while I was out of his power, wherein, however, it soon appeared I was deceived. I shall not trouble the reader with the particular account of my reception at this court, which was suitable to the generosity of so great a prince, nor of the difficulties I was in for want of a house and bed, being forced to lie on the ground, wrapped in my coverlet. Chapter 8. The author, by a lucky accident, finds means to leave Blefuscu, and after some difficulties returns safe to his native country. 3 days after my arrival, walking out of curiosity to the northeast coast of the island, I observed about a half a league off in the sea somewhat that looked like a boat overturned. I pulled off my shoes and stockings, and wading 200 or 300 yards, I found the object to approach nearer by force of the tide, and then plainly saw it to be a real boat, which I supposed might by some tempest have been driven from a ship. Whereupon I returned immediately towards the city and desired His Imperial Majesty to lend me 20 of the tallest vessels he had left after the loss of his fleet, and 3,000 seamen under the command of his Vice Admiral. This fleet sailed round while I went back the shortest way to the coast, where I first discovered the boat. I found the tide had driven it still nearer. The seamen were all provided with cordage, which I had beforehand twisted to a sufficient strength. When the ships came up, I stripped myself and waited till I came within 100 yards of the boat, after which I was forced to swim till I got up to it. The seamen threw me the end of the cord, which I fastened to a hole in the fore part of the boat, and the other to a man of war. But I found all of my labor to little purpose, for, being out of my depth, I was not able to work. In this necessity, I was forced to swim behind and push the boat forward as often as I could with one of my hands, and the tide favoring me, I advanced so far that I could just hold up my chin and feel the ground. I rested 2 or 3 minutes, and then gave the boat another shove, and so on, till the sea was no higher than my armpits. And now, the most laborious part being over, I took out my other cables, which were stowed in one of the ships, and fastened them first to the boat, and then to 9 of the vessels which attended me. The wind being favorable, the seamen towed, and I shoved until we arrived within 40 yards of the shore, and waiting till the tide was out, I got dry to the boat, and by the assistance of 2,000 men with ropes and engines, made a shift to turn it on its bottom, and found it was but a little damaged. I shall not trouble the reader with the difficulties I was under, but by the help of certain paddles, which cost me 10 days making, to get my boat into the royal port of Blefuscu, where a mighty concourse of people appeared upon my arrival, full of wonder at the sight of so prodigious a vessel. I told the Emperor that my good fortune had thrown this boat in my way, to carry me to some place whence I might return to my native country, and begged His Majesty's orders for getting materials to fit it up, together with his license to depart, which, after some kind of expostulations, he was pleased to grant. I did very much wonder in all this time not to have heard any express relating to me from our Emperor of the court of Blefuscu. But I was afterwards given privately to understand that His Imperial Majesty, never imagining I had the least notice of his designs, believed I was only gone to Blefuscu in performance of a promise, according to the license he had given me, which was well known to our court, and would return in a few days when the ceremony was ended. But he was at least in pain at my long absence, and after consulting with the treasurer and the rest of the cable, a person of quality was dispatched with a copy of the articles against me. This envoy had instructions to represent to the monarch of Blefuscu the great lenity of his master, who was contest to punish me no further than the loss of mine eyes, that I had fled from justice, and, if I did not return in 2 hours, I should be deprived of my title of Nardak and declared a traitor. The envoy further added that in order to maintain the peace and amity between both empires, his master expected that his brother of Blefuscu would give orders to have me sent back to Lilliput, bound hand and foot, to be punished as a traitor. The Emperor of Blefuscu, having taken 3 days to consult, returned an answer consisting of many civilities and excuses. He said that as for sending me bound to his brother, knew it was impossible, that although I had deprived him of his fleet, yet he owed great obligations to me for many good offices I had done him in making the peace, that however both of their majesties would soon be made easy, for I had found a prodigious vessel on the shore, able to carry me out to the sea, which he had given orders to fit up, and with my own assistance and direction, he hoped in a few weeks both empires would be freed from so insupportable an encumbrance. With this answer, the envoy returned to Lilliput, and the monarch of Blefuscu related to me all that had passed, offering me at the same time, but under the strictest confidence, his gracious protection, if I would continue in his service, wherein, although I believed him sincere, yet I resolved never more to put any confidence in princes or ministers, where I could... No, the page is stuck. There we go. Where I could avoid it. And therefore, with all due acknowledgment of his favourable intentions, I humbly beg to be excused. I told him that since fortune, whether good or evil, had thrown a vessel in my way, I was resolved to venture myself onto the ocean, rather than be an occasion of difference between two such mighty monarchs. Neither did I find the emperor at all displeased, and I discovered by a certain accident that he was very glad of my resolution, and so were most of his ministers. And asterisks. The Emperor of Blefuscu and his ministers were very glad to be rid of Gulliver. Soon after, Bolingbroke fled to France. Oh, we're having another. Whatever. Soon after Bolingbroke fled to France, Louis IV died. The regent Orleans resolutely preserved the English alliance and would give no countenance to the schemes of the Jacobites. I do not know what any of that meant. These considerations moved me, and I am sus to research some of this stuff because these old books can be really freaking racist, and I really just want the fantasy story. By a certain accident, that he was very glad of my resolution, and so were most of his ministers. These considerations moved me to hasten my departure somewhat sooner than I intended, to which the court, impatient to have me gone, very readily contributed. 500 workmen were employed to make 2 sails to my boat, according to my directions, by quilting 13 folds of their strongest linen together. I was at the pains of making ropes and cables by twisting 10, 20, or 30 of the thickest and strongest of theirs. A great stone that I happened to find after a long search by the seashore served me for an anchor. I had the tallow of 300 cows for greasing my boat, and other uses. I was at incredible pains in cutting down some of the largest timber trees for oars and masts, wherein I was, however, much assisted by His Majesty's ship carpenters, who helped me in smoothing them after I had done the rough work. In about a month, when all was prepared, I sent to receive His Majesty's commands and to take my leave. The Emperor and royal family came out of the palace. I lay down on my face to kiss his hand, which he very graciously gave me. So did the Empress and the young princes of the blood. His Majesty presented me with 50 purses of 200 sprugs apiece, together with his picture at full length, which I put immediately into one of my gloves to keep it from being hurt. The ceremonies at my departure were too many to trouble the reader with at this time. I stored the boat with the carcass of 100 oxen and 300 sheep, with bread and drink proportionable and as much meat proportional and as much meat readily dressed as 400 cooks could provide. I took with me 6 cows and 2 bulls alive, with as many ewes and rams in it, intending to carry them into my own country and propagate the breed, and to feed them on board. I had a good bundle of hay and a bag of corn. I would gladly have taken a dozen of the natives, but this was a thing the Emperor would by no means permit, and besides a diligent search into my pockets. His Majesty engaged my honor not to carry away any of his subjects, although with their own consent and desire. Having thus prepared all things as well as I was able, I set sail on the 24th day of September, 1701, at 6 in the morning, and when I had gone about 4 leagues to the northward, the wind being at the southeast at 6 in the evening, I described a small island about half a league to the northwest. I advanced forwards and cast anchor on the lee side of the island, which seemed to be uninhabited. I then took some refreshment and went to my rest. I slept well, as I conjecture at least 6 hours, for I found the day broken 2 hours after I awoke. It was a clear night. I ate my breakfast before the sun was up, and heaving anchor, the wind being favorable, I steered the same course that I had done the day before, wherein I was directed by my pocket compass. My intention was to reach, if possible, one of those islands which I had reason to believe lay to the northeast of Van Diemen's Land. I discovered nothing all that day, but upon the next, about 3 in the afternoon, when I had, by my computation, made 24 leagues from Blefuscu, I descried a sail steering into the southeast. My course was due east. I hailed her, but could get no answer. Yet I found that I gained upon her, for the wind slackened. I made all the sail I could, and in half an hour she spied me, then hung out her ancient and discharged a gun. It was not easy to express the joy I was in. Oh, into the air. Okay. Upon the unexpected hope of once more seeing my beloved country and all the dear pledges I'd left in it. Right, because he has a wife. The ship slackened her sails, and I think he's got kids too. The ship slackened her sails, and I came upon her between 5 and 6 in the evening, September the 26th. But my heart leaped within me to see her English colors. I put my cows and sheep into my coat pocket and got on board with all my little cargo and provisions. The vessel was an English merchantman returning from Japan by the North and South Seas. Captain, Mr. John Biddle of Deptford, a very civil man and an excellent sailor. We were now in the latitude 30 degrees south. There were about 50 men in the ship, and here I met an old comrade of mine, one Peter Williams, who gave me a good character to the captain. This gentleman treated me with kindness, and desired I would let him know what place I came from last, and whither I was bound, which I did in a few words. But he thought I was raving, and that the dangers I had undergone had disturbed my head. Whereupon I took my black cattle and sheep out of my pocket, which, after great astonishment, clearly convinced him of my veracity. I then showed him the gold given me by the Emperor Blefuscu, together with His Majesty's picture at full length, and some other rarities of that country. Gave him 2 purses of 200 sprugs each, and promised when we arrived in England to make him a present of a cow and a sheep. I shall not trouble the reader with a particular account of this voyage, which was very preposterous for the most part. We arrived in the Downs on the 13th of April. We arrived in the Downs on the 13th of April, 1702. He was brought with them September. Okay. So he got picked up by the ship in September, and then he arrived in Downs in the April. Okay. I had only one misfortune, that the rats on board carried away one of my sheep. I found her bones in a hole, picked clean from the flesh. The rest of my cattle I got safe ashore, and set them a-grazing in a bowling green at Greenwich, where the fineness of the grass made them feed very heartily, though I had always feared the contrary. Neither could I possibly have preserved them in so long a voyage, if the captain had not allowed me some of his best biscuit, which, rubbed powder and mingled with water, was their constant food. The short time I continued in England, I made a considerable profit by showing my cattle to many persons of quality and others, and before I began my second voyage, I sold them for £600. Since my last return, I found the breed is considerably increased, especially the sheep, which I hope will prove much to the advantage of the woolen manufacturer by the fineness of their fleeces. I stayed but 2 months with my wife and family, for my insatiable desire of seeing foreign countries would suffer me to continue no longer. I left £1,500 with my wife, and fixed her in a good house at Redriff. Yeah. My remaining stock I carried with me, part in money and part in goods, in hopes to improve my fortune. My eldest uncle John had left me an estate in land near Epping of about £30 a year, and I had long lease of the Black Bull in Fetter Lane, which yielded me as much more so that I was not in any danger of leaving my family upon the parish. And by parish, we don't mean parish as in die, we mean parish as in the church. It's spelled with a P-A-R-I-S. Anyways, my son Johnny, named so after his uncle, was at the grammar school, and a towardly child. I don't know what that means. I want to look that up. What does towardly mean? Towardly. Towardly is an archaic adjective meaning favorable, promising, or docile. Interesting. So he is a calm-spirited and potentially a good future ahead of him. That's nice. And a towardly child. My daughter Betty, who is now well married and has children. Oh my. How old is Gulliver? Was then at her needlework. I took leave of my wife and boy and girl, with tears on both sides, and went on aboard the Adventure, a merchant ship of 300 tons, bound for Surat, Captain John Nicholas of Liverpool, commander. But my account of this voyage must be referred to the second part of my travels. Okay. So we are going to read, there's a little thing underneath. After the first edition of the Travels had appeared, Gay wrote a little put-in ode addressing to Quimby Flestrin by Titty Tit, poet Laureate, Poet Laureate to His Majesty of Lilliput. Pope thus referred to it as a letter to Swift, March 8th, 1726 to the 27th. You received, I hope, some commendatory verses from a horse and a Lilliputan to Gulliver, and an heroic, that's weird, a heroic epistle to Mrs. Gulliver. The bookseller would fain have printed them before the second edition of the book, but I would not permit it without your approbation, nor do I much like them. Oh, we concur in the last observation. The ode of the Lilliputian Laureate is rather ingenious than clever, the lines except the last, each stanza being trisyllabic, to represent the pygmy proportions of a Lilliputian poetry. We subjoin the ode. I'm gonna have to read poetry. To Quinbus Flestrin, the Man Mountain, an ode by Titty Tit Esquire? I'm assuming? Poet Laureate to His Majesty of Lilliput, translated into English. I don't know how to read this. It's separated into 3 sections of lines, but they carry on to the next page. I don't know if I'm supposed to go all the way down left, including the page, and then move on to the second bracket, or across. Let's try this way first. In a maze lost I gaze, can our eyes reach thy size? When they said, alas, head, prop the skies, see and believe your eyes. See him stride valleys wide, over woods, over floods, when he treads mountains' heads, groan and shake, armies quake. May my lays swell with praise, worthy thee, worthy me, lest his spurn overturn man and steed. Troops take heed, left and right, speed your flight, lest an host beneath his foot be lost. Turned aside from his hide, safe from wound, darts rebound from his nose. Muse inspire all thy fire, bards of old, of him told. Clouds he blows, when he speaks thunder breaks, when he eats famine threats, when he drinks Neptune shrinks. Nigh thy ear in mid-air, on thy hand let me stand, so shall I, lofty poet, touch the sky. Yeah, I don't know if reading this anyway would have made a lot of sense. Muse inspire all thy fire, bards of old of him told. When they said, alas, head popped this. Yeah, I don't know. It's poetry. Interpret it as you want. A voyage to Brom. God damn it. Maybe they have a way to say this on. Maybe somebody's put the pronunciation. Normally I would just come up with something and skip it, but this is gonna be bring out because the whole book's about it. So how to say this one? Brob. Ding. Turn the volume up so I can. Okay, Brob Ding Nag. Cat's being weird. Okay. Chapter 1. A great storm described, the longboat sent to fetch water. The author goes with it to discover the country. He is left on shore, is seized by one of the natives, and carried to a farmer's house. His reception with several accidents that happened there. A description of the inhabitants. Having been condemned by nature and fortune to an active and restless life, in 2 months after my return, I again left my native country and took shipping in the Downs. On the 20th day of June, 1702, in the Adventure, Captain John Nicholas, a Cornishman commander, bound for Surat? What's Surat, and where is it? Surat. A city in India. How do I say this name? Wikipedia? How pronounced? How Nouns. Nouns. To not have found them. Surret. Surret. Probably still butchering it, but Surret. Okay, bound for Surret. Is this the right? Wait, is it? Yeah. Okay. We had a preposterous gale till we arrived at the Cape of Good Hope, where we landed for fresh water. But discovering a leak, we unshipped our goods and wintered there. For the captain falling sick of an... I just want to get through the page. Well, I mean, we're at the beginning of the chapter. I'm still going to look up how to say this. I don't know what this is. Another weird word. Ague. Malaria or some other illness involving fever and shivering. Ague. For the captain falling sick of an ague, we could not leave the Cape till the end of March. I believe the ads are starting now. Oh, well. We then set sail and had a good voyage till we passed the Straits of Madagascar, but having got northward of that island and to about 5 degrees south latitude, the winds, which in those seas are observed to blow a constant equal gale between north and west, from the beginning of December to the beginning of May, on the 19th of April began to blow with much greater violence and more westerly than usual, continuing so for 20 days together, during which time we were driven to a little to the east of the Molucca Islands, and about 3 degrees northward of the line, as our Darn, this sentence was so long, it kept going. How long is this sentence? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 40, 41, 42, 49, 50, 51, 52, 59, 60, 61, 63, 64, 1, 72, 73, 74, 75. 90, 60, 89, 100, 1, 2, 9, 11, 13, 16, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 5, 26, 29, 33, 34, 35, 36, 38, 39, 40. This sentence is about 140 words long. That's a paragraph. If I tried doing that in English class, I'd have gotten in trouble. They'd have been like, put a period. You have a run-on sentence. And they wonder why I was writing run-on sentences if I'm reading Gulliver Travels. But this is the highest form of literacy, or literary work. It's a... Right? They just have a, like... I'm sorry, do you get distracted after 20 words? Can you not handle a larger sentence? I was just trying to get through it before the ads started, okay? You forgot your water over here, by the way, if you want it. Oh. We're about a quarter of the way through the book. I was always surprised how long the final book was, and I don't ever, like, I've read it roughly, but, like, I was never interested in it that well. It was just weird to me. It was so abstract, I couldn't... So maybe this time I read it, I'll have a better grasp. Oh no! You need to ban somebody. What? I barely what? I can follow what's saying. I gave a summary before the book started. Besides, this is not the first time I've read this. It's a long book. It's very dry, and I usually sit down and read it. So, like, if I'm sitting and reading without having to read it out loud, I can usually get through this book within 2 days. So, by the end of it, my attention span is pretty short. When they start talking about, I think it's flying horses, talking horses, I get kind of, it just feels like it kind of falls off the deep end. No offense to any horse aficionados. I can't even remember if there's like 2 more chapters after Bulling, whatever the hell this place is called. Brobdingnag? I hate the name. Brobdingnag? He just really likes putting weird words and names in here. Like this one, it's Glubbdubdrib. Glubbdubdrib. It's like your GM's like, and I want to talk to this NPC. What's his name? His name's Glubbdubdrib. Really? No, it's Hunims. He's a Hunims. Seriously though, that's actually what they're called in here. Hunims. I'm gonna have a lot of fun saying that a bunch of times. Inferior to the Hunims. There's no consonants in this word. Sorry, no vowels. No vowels. There's like this. No, I guess they're all crunched up at the front right after the H. There's 3 vowels, and then the rest of them are consonants, and it's like hell. It also sounds like they're trying to say human. Hey, they said Yahoo with a capital Y. Is Yahoo an insult? Now I need to see this. Called himself a Yahoo. Definition. I got distracted. A rude, noisy, or violent person. Why did Yahoo call themselves that? Hey, you know where the origin of Yahoo is? It's from Gulliver Travels. It's literally from this book. Mid-18th century, from the name of an imaginary race of brutish creatures in Swift's Gulliver Travels 1726. Yahoo. A rude, noisy, or violent person. Barbarian, a Philistine, Bulgarian, savage, brute beast. I'm reading the origin of a word that led to a messaging company. And I honestly, my email that I use is Yahoo. It comes full circle. Oh, shush. Everything comes back to Gulliver. Wait a minute. I'm gonna mute this for a second. Sorry, I had to share something with my husband. I'm giggling now. And he's laughing at me. Anyways, back to this really long sentence. Straits of Madagascar. He had a whatever problem. He was sick, got better. They were traveling because they were delayed. There was a wind. From the beginning of December to the beginning of May, on the 19th of April, began to blow with much greater violence, and more westerly than usual, continuing so for 20 days together, during which time we were driven a little to the east of the Molucca Islands, and about 3 degrees northward of the line, as our captain found by an observation he took on the 2nd of May, at which time the wind ceased, and it was a perfect calm, whereat I was not a little rejoiced. Whereas I was not a little rejoiced, But he, being a man well experienced in the navigation of those seas, bid us all prepare against a storm, which accordingly happened the day following. For the southern wind, called the southern monsoon, began to set in. Finding it was likely to overblow, we took in our spirit sail and stood by to hand the foresail. But making foul weather, we looked to the gun. Sometimes the wording in this really catches me. But making foul weather, we looked. The guns were all fast. And hastened the mizzen, or handed it. Oh my gosh! And handed the mizzen. What's a mizzen? The 1700s were a crazy time. The yahoos everywhere. Mizzen. He wrote a book. He wrote a book in the 1700s. What can we say? He did a thing. And I mean, I find it entertaining. It's not a badly written book. It's just very weirdly worded. But again, 1700s were... Touche. I don't know. Mizzen. The mast aft of a ship's mainmast. The lowest sail of a mizzen mast. Sailing terms are silly. The lowest sail on a mizzen mast. Mizzen yard. Late Middle English from Italian mezzana. Mizzen sail, feminine, used as a noun of mezzano, middle, from Latin medianus. See median. Like, is this similar to what we would say the meridian? The middle? I don't know. Going back to reading. Silly book. Mizzens aren't real. Likely overblown. Spirit sail, took to hand the foresail, making foul weather, we looked to the guns were all fast, and handed the mizzen. The ship lay very broad off, so we thought it better spooning before the sea than trying or hulling. What is trying? In the context of sailing, like, I know what trying is. Oh god. I have to look this up now. Sailing terms, I don't know. Trying. Definition. If it doesn't have this in here, I'm gonna struggle. Yes, I know, difficult or annoying. Try, origin. No, it's not in here. Okay, trying definition, sailing term. Sailing terms. Not in here. Did I read this? Is it really trying? I might need to put this in quotation marks for Google to only give me results containing this. Try this again. Trying, laying to... Oh yeah, okay. Trying. Laying to in a gale of wind under a small sail. Trysail. A small sail used by cutters and brigs in blowing weather. So it's their smaller sail. Okay. And what is hulling? That means hulling. In a sailing context, hulling, or lying a hull, means a vessel drifting or lying almost beam on to strong winds, without sails up, and with the helm lashed to point the vessel into the wind, a technique used to ride out storms. Okay, so hulling is into the storm, and tying is using the small sail to go with the storm, I think. Okay. The ship lay very broad off. I don't know what that means. Broad off. So I'm looking all these up. Breast, side by side or alongside the vessel, or broad off her beam, adrift loosed, not on moorings. So if we read this, I can't believe I have to translate this. Foul ship lay. So when it says the ship lay very broad off, that means that they were nowhere near where they could lash the ship to, or like, I'm assuming drop anchor or tie to any sort of mooring. Okay. So the ship lay very broad off, so we thought it better spooning. Spooning. Love, what's spooning mean? Spooning. In a sailing context, spooning refers to a vessel being forced to heel or lean over by the wind, especially if the sails are not properly trimmed or the boat is overloaded. Heeling. Spooning is a form of heeling where the boat leans to one side due to the force of the wind on the sails. Spoon drift. Spoon drift is a sort of showery sprinkling of the seawater swept from the surface of the waves in a tempest and flying according to the direction of the wind like vapor. So we thought it better spooning before the sea than trying or hulling. So they put their side and they leaned back and forth. We reefed the foresail and set him and hauled aft the foresheet. See, I don't know what any of these mean. Any sailors in the chat that can explain this to me? We reefed the foresail. So what does it mean to reef? Reef a sail. I assume, does that mean like making it small? Reef a sail means to reduce the sail area by shortening the sail, typically using reef points or lines to make the boat easier to handle in stronger winds. It involves securing the sail to a lower point on the boom, the horizontal spar that the sail is attached to, or to the mast, effectively reducing the sail's height and area. Okay, yeah, so reefed the foresail and set him, and hauled aft the foresheet. And pulled, so I know what aft means, it's the back, so, right? I know. Because fore is front, right? So aft is rear. Come on, let me select. I'm doubting myself. Yeah, the rear or back of a vessel. So they pulled. So they lowered the foresail and tied that, and then pulled the foresheet back. The helm was hard aweather. The ship wore bravely. We belayed the fore down haul. I assume belay means negate, because belay that order. We belayed the fore and set him hauled aft the foresheet or foresail. Oh no, we belayed the fore downhaul. I don't know what that means. So they left the downhaul alone. But the sail was split. So the fore downhaul sail was split, and we hauled down the yard and got the sail into the ship and unbound all the things clear of it. It was a very fierce storm. The sea broke strange and dangerous. We hauled off upon the lanyards of the whip staff and helped the man at the helm. We would not get down our topmast, but would let all stand, because she scuttled before the sea very well. Scudded before the sea very well. What does that mean? Scudded. Scudded, scuds. The scud is to quickly dart or dash, the way clouds scud across the sky on a windy day, or a sailboat scuds along the ocean. Okay. She scudded before the sea very well, and we knew that the topmast being aloft, the ship was the wholesomer, and made better way through the sea, seeing we had sea room. So they just let the ship blow with the wind. Okay. When the storm was over, we set foresail and mainsail and brought the ship to. Then we set the main topsail, and the fore topsail, I really hope Gulliver, or the guy who wrote this, did know sailing, because Jonathan Swift was born in Dublin. I think there was like a whole thing about his life in here, introduction. Maybe we'll read that after. I'm just going to assume that he knows how to sail, because that definitely sounds like somebody. But he also could have been speaking gibberish, and I would not have been able to argue it. I don't know how to handle a storm in a ship with actual sails and multiple masts. So we go. We got the starboard tracks aboard. We cast off the weather bowlings, weather braces, and lifts. We set in the lee braces and hauled them tight and belayed them, and hauled over the mizzen and hauled forward by tack to windward, and kept her full and by as near as she would lie. During the storm, which was followed by a strong west wind southwest, strong wind west-southwest, we were carried, by my computation, about 500 leagues to the east, so that the oldest sailor on board could not tell in what part of the world we were. Our provisions held out well, our ship was staunch, and our crew, all in good health. But we lay in the utmost distress for water. We thought it best to hold on the same course rather than turn more northerly, which might have brought us to the northwest part of Great Tartary, and into the frozen sea. On the 16th day of June, what direction were they traveling? West, southwest. Okay. 1703, a boy on the topmast discovered land. On the 17th, we came into full view of a great island or continent, for we knew not whether. On the south side whereof was a small neck of land jutting out into the sea, and a creek too shallow to hold a ship or above 100 tons. To hold a ship of above 100 tons. We cast anchor within a league of this creek, and our captain sent a dozen of his men well armed into the longboat with vessels for water, if any could be found. I desired his leave to go with them, that I might see the country and make what discoveries I could. When we came to land, we saw no river or spring, nor any sign of inhabitants. Our men therefore wandered on the shore to find out some fresh water near the sea. And I walked alone about a mile on the other side, where I observed the country all barren and rocky. I now began to be weary, and seeing nothing to entertain my curiosity, I returned gently down towards the creek, and the sea being full into my view, I saw our men already got into the boat, and rowing for life to the ship. I was going to holla after them, although it had been to little purpose, when I observed a huge creature walking after them in the sea, as fast as he could. He waded not much deeper than his knees, and took prodigious strides, but our men had the start of him half a league, and the sea thereabouts being full of sharp-pointed rocks, the monster was not able to overtake the boat. This I was afterwards told, for I durst not say to see the issue of the adventure, but ran as fast as I could the way I first went, and then climbed up a steep hill, which gave me some prospect of the country. I found it fully cultivated, but that which first surprised me was the length of the grass, which in those grounds that seemed to be kept for hay was about 20 feet high. I fell into a high road, for so I took it to be, though it served to the inhabitants only as a footpath through a field of barley. Here I walked on for some time, but could see little on either side, being now near harvest, and the corn rising to at least 40 feet. I was an hour walking to the end of this field, which was fenced in with a hedge of at least 120 feet high, and the trees so lofty that I could make no computation of their altitude. There was a stile to pass from this field unto the next. It had 4 steps and a stone to cross over when you came to the uppermost. It was impossible for me to climb this stile, because every step was 6 feet high, and the upper stone about 20. So he's, in this comparison, he's about 6 inches to a foot, I'm guessing. I was endeavoring to find some gap in the hedge, when I discovered one of the inhabitants in the next field, advancing towards a stile of the same size with him whom I saw, in the sea pursuing her boat. He appeared as tall as an ordinary spire steeple, and took about 10 yards at every stride, as near as I could guess. I was struck with the utmost fear and astonishment, and ran to hide myself in the corn, whence I saw him at the top of the stile looking back into the next field on the right hand, and heard him call in a voice many degrees louder than a speaker trumpet. But the noise was so high in the air that at first I certainly thought it was thunder, whereupon several monsters like himself came towards him with reaping hooks in their hands, each hook about the largeness of 6 scythes. These people were not so well clad as the first, whose servants or laborers they seemed to be. For upon some words he spoke, they went to reap the corn in the field where I lay. I kept from them as great a distance as I could, but was forced to move with extreme difficulty, for the stalks of the corn were sometimes not above a foot distant, so that I could hardly squeeze my body betwixt them. However, I made a shift to go forwards till I came to a part of the field where the corn had been laid by the rain and wind. Here it was impossible for me to advance a step, for the stalks were so interwoven that I could not creep through, and the beards of the fallen ears so strong and pointed that they pierced through my clothes into my flesh. At the same time, I heard the reapers not above 100 yards behind me. Being quite dispirited with toil and wholly overcome by grief and despair, I lay down between 2 ridges and heartily wished I might there end my days. I bemoaned my desolate widow and fatherless children. I lamented my own folly and wilfulness in attempting a second voyage against the advice of all my friends and my relations. In this terrible agitation of mind, I could not forbear thinking of Lilliput, whose inhabitants looked upon me as the greatest prodigy that ever appeared in the world. Where I was able to draw an imperial fleet in my hand and perform those other actions which will be recorded forever in the chronicles of that empire, while posterity shall hardly believe them, although attested by millions, I reflected what a mortification it must prove to me to appear as inconsiderable in this nation as one single Lilliputian would be among us. But this I conceived was to be the least of my misfortunes, for as human creatures were observed to be more savage and cruel in proportion to their bulk, what could I expect but to be a morsel in the mouths of the first among these enormous barbarians who should happen to seize me? Undoubtedly, philosophers are in the right when they tell us nothing is great or little otherwise than by a comparison. What? Nothing is great or little otherwise than by comparison. It might have pleased fortune to have let the Lilliputians find some nation where the people were as diminutive with respect to them as they were to me, and who knows but that even this prodigious race of mortals might be equally overmatched in some distant part of the world, whereof we have yet to no discovery. Scared and confounded as I was, I could not forbear going on with these reflections, when one of the reapers approaching within 10 yards of the ridge where I lay made me apprehend that with the next step I should be squashed to death under his foot, or cut in 2 with his reaping hook, and therefore, when he was again about to move, I screamed as loud as fear could make me, whereupon the huge creature trod short, and looking round about under him for some time, at last espied me as I lay on the ground. He considered a while, with the caution of one who endeavors to lay hold on a small dangerous animal in such a manner that it shall not be able to either to scratch or bite him, as I myself had sometimes done with a weasel in England. At length he ventured to take me behind by my middle between his forefinger and thumb, and brought me within 3 yards of his eyes, that he might behold my shape more perfectly. I guessed his meaning, and my good fortune gave me so much presence of mind that I resolved not to struggle in the least as he held me in the air above 60 feet from the ground, although he grievously pinched my sides for fear I should slip through his fingers. All I ventured was to raise mine eyes towards the sun, and place my hands together in a supplicating posture, and to speak some words in a humble, melancholy tone, suitable for the condition I then was in. For I apprehended every moment that he would dash me against the ground, as we usually do to any little hateful animal which we have a mind to destroy. But my good star would have it that he appeared pleased with my voice and gestures, and began to look upon me as a curiosity, much wondering to hear me pronounce articulate words, although he could not understand them. In the meantime, I was not able to forbear groaning and shedding tears, and turning my head towards my sides, letting him know as well as I could how cruelly I was hurt by the pressure of his thumb and finger. He seemed to apprehend my meaning, for lifting up the lappet of his coat, he put me gently into it, and he immediately ran along with me to his master, who was a substantial farmer, and the same person I had first seen in the field. The farmer, having, as I supposed by their talk, received such an account of me as his servant could give him, took a piece of a small straw about the size of a walking staff, and therewith lifted up the lappets of my coat, which it seemed he thought to be some kind of covering that nature had given it. He blew my hair aside to take a better view of my face. He called his hinds about him, and asked them, as I afterwards learned, whether they had ever seen in the fields any little creature that resembled me. He then placed me softly on the ground upon all fours, but I immediately got up and walked slowly backwards and forwards to let those people see I had no intent to run away. They all sat down in a circle about me, the better to observe my motions. I pulled off my hat and made a low bow towards the farmer. I fell on my knees and lifted up my hands and eyes and spoke several words as loud as I could. I took a purse of gold out of my pocket and humbly presented it to him. He received it on the palm of his hand, then applied it close to his eyes to see what it was, and afterwards turned it several times with the point of a pin, which he took out of his sleeve, but could make nothing of it. Whereupon I made a sign that he should place his hand on the ground. I then took the purse and, opening it, poured all the gold into his palm. There were 6 Spanish pieces of 4 pistols each, between 20 and 30 smaller coins. I saw him wet the tip of his little finger upon his tongue, and take up one of my largest pieces, and then another, but he seemed to be wholly ignorant what they were. He made me a sign to put them again into my purse, and the purse again into my pocket, which, after offering it to him several times, I thought it best to do. The farmer by this time was convinced I must be a rational creature. He spoke often to me, but the sound of his voice pierced my ears like that of a watermill, yet his words were articulate enough. I answered as loud as I could in several languages, but he often laid his ear within 2 yards of me, but all in vain, for we were wholly unintelligible to each other. He then sent his servants to their work, and taking his handkerchief out of his pocket, he doubled and spread it on his palm, on his left hand, which he placed flat on the ground with the palm upwards, making me a sign to step into it, as I could easily do, for it was not above a foot in thickness. I thought it my part to obey, and, for fear of falling, laid myself at full length upon the handkerchief, with the remainder of which he wrapped me up to the head for further security, and in this manner carried me home to his house. There he called his wife and showed me to her, but she screamed and ran back, as women in England do at the sight of a toad or spider. However, when she had a while seen my behavior, and how well observed the signs her husband made, she was soon reconciled, and by degrees grew extremely tender of me. It was about 12 at noon, and a servant brought in dinner. It was only one substantial dish of meat, fit for the plain condition of a husbandman, in a dish of about 4 feet in diameter. The company were the farmer and his wife, 3 children, and an old grandmother. When they were sat down, the farmer placed me at some distance from him on the table, which was 30 feet high from the floor. I was in a terrible fright, and kept as far as I could from the edge for fear of falling. The wife minced a bit of meat and then crumbled some bread on a trencher and placed it before me. I made her a low bow, took out my knife and fork, and fell to eating, which gave them exceeding delight. The mistress sent her maid for a small dram cup, which held about 2 gallons, and filled it with drink. I took up the vessel with much difficulty in both hands, and in a most respectable manner drank to her ladyship's health, expressing the words as loud as I could in English, which made the company laugh so heartily that I was almost deafened with the noise. This liquor tasted like a small cider, and was not unpleasant. Then the master made me a sign to come to his trencher side, but as I walked on the table, being in great surprise all the time, as the indulgent reader will easily conceive and excuse, I happened to stumble against a crust, and fell flat on my face, but received no hurt. I got up immediately, and observing the good people to be in much concern, I took my hat, which I held under my arm out of good manners, and waving it over my head, made 3 huzzas, to show I got no mischief by my fall. But advancing forwards towards my master, as I shall henceforth call him, his youngest son, who sat next to him, an arch boy of about 10 years old, took me up by my legs and held me so high in the air that I trembled in every limb. But his father snatched me from him, and at the same time gave him such a box of the left ear as would have felled an European troop of horses to the earth, ordering him to be taken from the table. But being afraid this boy might owe me a spite, and well remembered how mischievous all children among us naturally are to sparrows, rabbits, or young kittens and puppy dogs, I fell on my knees and pointed to the boy, made my master to understand as well as I could that I desired his son might be pardoned. The father complied, and the lad took his seat again, whereupon I went to him and kissed his hand, which my master took and made him stroke me gently with it. In the midst of dinner, my mistress's favorite cat leaped onto her lap. I heard a noise behind me like that of a dozen stocking weavers at work, and turned my head. I found it proceeding from the purring of that animal, who seemed to be 3 times larger than an ox, as I computed by the view of her head and one of her paws, while her mistress was feeding and stroking her. The fierceness of this creature's countenance altogether decomposed me, though I stood at the farthest end of the table, above 50 feet off, and though my mistress held her fast for fear she might give a spring and seize me in her talons. But it happened there was no danger, for the cat took not the least notice of me when my master placed me within 3 yards of her, and as I have been always told, and found true by experience in my travels, that flying or discovering fear before a fierce animal is a certain way to make it pursue or attack you. So I resolved in this dangerous juncture to show no manner of concern. I walked with intrepidity 5 or 6 times before the very head of the cat, and came within half a yard of her, whereupon she drew herself back as if she were more afraid of me. I had less apprehension concerning the dogs, whereof 3 or 4 came into the room, as it is usual in farmers' houses, one of which was a mastiff equal in bulk to 4 elephants, and a greyhound somewhat taller than the mastiff, but not so large. When dinner was almost done, the nurse came in with a child of a child of a year old in her arms, who immediately spied me, and began a squall that you might have heard from London Bridge to Chelsea. After the usual oratory of infants to get me for a plaything, the mother, out of pure indulgence, took me up and put me towards the child, who presently seized me by the middle and got my head into its mouth, where I roared so loud that the urchin was frightened and let me drop, and I should infallibly have broke my neck if the mother had not held her apron under me. The nurse, to quiet her babe, made use of a rattle, which was a kind of hollow vessel filled with great stones and fastened by a cable to the child's waist, but all in vain, so that she was forced to apply the last remedy by giving it drink. Oh, don't give your kids alcohol, people. Yes, maybe it would make them quiet. Don't give them alcohol. The strange appearance of the spots, pimples, and freckles on this woman's skin made me reflect upon the fair skins of our English ladies, who appear so beautiful to us only because they are of our own size, and their defects not to be seen but through a magnifying glass, where we find by experiment that the smoothest and whitest skins look rough and coarse and ill-colored. I remember when I was at Lilliput, the complexions of those diminutive people appeared to me the fairest in the world, and talking upon this subject with a person of learning there, who was an intimate friend of mine, he said that my face appeared much fairer and smoother when he looked on me from the ground than it did upon nearer view, when I took him up in my hand and brought him close, which he confessed was at first a very shocking sight. He said he could discover great holes in my skin, that the stumps of my beard were 10 times stronger than the bristles of a boar, and my complexion made up several colors altogether disagreeable. Although I must beg leave to say for myself that I am as fair as most of my sex in the country, and very little sunburnt by all my travels. On the other side, discoursing of the ladies in that emperor's court, he used to tell me one had freckles, another too large a mouth, a third too large a nose. Nothing of which I was able to distinguish. I confess this reflection was obvious enough, which, however, I could not forbear, lest the reader might think these vast creatures were actually deformed. But I must do them the justice to say they are a comely race of people, and particularly the features of my master's countenance, although he was but a farmer, when I beheld him from the height of 60 feet, appeared very well proportioned. When dinner was done, my master went out to his labourers, and, as I could discover by his voice and gesture, gave his wife a strict charge to take care of me. I was very much tired and disposed to sleep, which my mistress perceiving, she put me on her own bed and covered me with a clean white handkerchief, but larger and coarser than the mainsail of a man of war. I slept about 2 hours, and dreamt I was at home with my wife and children, which aggravated my sorrows when I awakened, and found myself alone in a vast room between 200 and 300 feet wide, and about 200 feet high, lying in a bed 20 yards wide. My mistress was gone about her household affairs, and had locked me in. The bed was 8 yards from the floor. Although wishing to get down, I durst not presume to call, and if I had, it would have been in vain. With such a voice as mine, at so great a distance as from the room where I lay to the kitchen where the family kept. That's weird. They put kept in in italic. Whatever. While I was under these circumstances, 2 rats crept up the curtains and ran smelling backwards and forwards on my bed. One of them came up almost to my face, whereupon I rose in a fright and drew out my hanger to defend myself. These horrible animals had the boldness to attack me on both sides, and one of them held his forefeet at my collar, but I had the good fortune to rip up his belly before he could do any mischief. He fell down at my feet, and the other, seeing the fate of his comrade, made his escape, but not without one good wound on the back, which I gave him as he fled, and made the blood run trickling from him. After this exploit, I walked gently to and fro on the bed to recover my breath and loss of spirits. These creatures were of the size of a large mastiff, but infinitely more nimble and fierce, so that if I had taken off my belt before I went to sleep, I must have infallibly been torn to pieces and devoured. I measured the tail of the dead rat, and found it to be 2 yards long, wanting an inch, but it went against my stomach to draw the carcass off the bed where it lay still bleeding. I observed it had yet some life, but with a strong slash across its neck, I thoroughly dispatched it. Soon after, my mistress came into the room, who, seeing me all bloody, ran and took me up in her hand. I pointed to the dead rat, smiling and making other signs to show I was not hurt, whereat she was extremely rejoiced, calling the maid to take up the dead rat with a pair of tongs and throw it out the window. Then she set me on a table where I showed her my hanger all bloody, and wiping it on the lappet of my coat, returned it to the scabbard. I was anxious to wash and dress myself, and therefore endeavored to make my mistress understand that I desired to be set down on the floor, which after she had done, my bashfulness would not suffer me to express myself farther than pointing... by pointing at the door and bowing several times. The good woman, with much difficulty, at last perceived what I would be at, and left me to myself for a short time. I hope the gentle reader will excuse me for dwelling on these and the like particulars, which, however insignificant they may appear to groveling, vulgar minds, yet will certainly help a philosopher to enlarge his thoughts and imagination, and apply them to the benefit of public as well as private life, which was my sole design in presenting this and other accounts of my travels to the world, wherein I have been chiefly studious of truth, without affecting my ornaments of learning or of style. The whole scene of this voyage made so strong an impression on my mind, and is so deeply fixed in my memory, that in committing it to paper I did not omit one material circumstance. However, upon a strict review, I blotted out several passages of less moment, which were in my first copy, for fear of being censured as tedious or trifling, whereof travellers are often, perhaps not without justice, accused. Chapter 2. A description of the farmer's daughter, the author carried to a market town, and then to the metropolis, the particulars of his journey. My mistress had a daughter of 9 years old, a child of towardly parts of her age, very dexterous at her needle and skillful in dressing her baby. Her mother and she contrived to fit the baby's cradle for me against the night. To fit up the baby's cradle for me against night. The cradle was put into a small drawer of a cabinet, and the drawer placed upon a hanging shelf for fear of the rats. This was my bed all the time I stayed with these people, though made more convenient by degrees as I began to learn their language and make my wants known. This young girl was so handy that after I had once or twice pulled off my clothes before her, she was able to dress and undress me, though I never gave her that trouble when she would let me do either myself. She made me 7 shirts and some other linen of as fine cloth as could be got, which indeed was coarser than sackcloth, and these she consistently washed for me with my own... And these she constantly washed for me with her own hands. My eyes blurred there. Swift committed so hard to the bit. I love this so much. Yeah. She was likewise my schoolmistress to teach me the language. When I pointed to anything, she told me the name of it and in her own tongue. So that in a few days I was able to to call for whatever I had to mind. I can do this. She was likewise my schoolmistress, to teach me the language. When I pointed to anything, she told me the name of it in her own tongue, so that in a few days I was able to call for whatever I had mind to. She was very good-natured, and not above 40 feet high, being little for her age. She gave me the name. She gave me the name of Grildrig, which the family took up, and afterwards the whole kingdom. The word imparts what the Latins called homunculus. Oh. And to Italians, homuncelatino, and the English mannequin. To her I chiefly owe my preservation in that country. We never parted while I was there. I called her my... That is one thing I don't like about him, is he comes up with words that are just hard to pronounce because they're... Anyways, Glumdalclitch, okay, or little nurse, and should be guilty of great ingratitude if I omitted this honorable mention of her care and affection towards me, which I heartily wish it lay up in my power to requite as she deserves, instead of being the innocent but unhappy instrument of her disgrace, as I have too much reason to fear. It now began to be known and talked of in the neighborhood that my master had found a strange animal in the field, about the bigness of a splachnuck, but exactly shaped in every part like a human creature, which it likewise imitated in all its actions, seemed to speak in a little language of its own, and already learnt several words of theirs, went erect upon 2 legs, was tame and gentle, and would come when it was called, do whatever it was bid, had the finest limbs in the world, and a complexion fairer than a noble's daughter of 3 years old. Yeah, gotta know some beforehand. Like, he definitely has... I do appreciate it. He has consistency with each of the books, that the names, though silly, have a similar vibe to their silliness. So I guess, and he's trying to, I guess, like convey how foreign the language is, so that it's not related to any known languages. So I guess it makes sense that the names would be that hard to deal with, I guess. Another farmer who lived hard by, and was a particular friend of my master, came on a visit on purpose to inquire about into the truth of this story. I was immediately produced and placed upon a table, where I walked as I was commanded, drew my hanger, put it up again, made my reverence to my master's guest, asked him in his own language how he did, and told him he was welcome just as my little nurse had instructed me. This man, who was old and dim-sighted, put on his spectacles to behold me better, at which I could not forbear laughing very heartily, for his eyes appeared like full moons shining into a chamber at 2 windows. Our people, who discovered the cause of my mirth, bore me company in laughing, at which the old fellow was fool enough to be angry and out of countenance. He had the character of a great miser, and to my misfortune he well deserved it, for by bad advice he gave my master to show me as a sight upon the market day in the next town, which was half an hour's riding, about 22 miles from our house. I guess there was some mischief contriving when I observed my master and his friend whispering long together, sometimes pointing at me, and my fears made me fancy that I overheard and understood some of their words. But the next morning, Glumdalclitch, my little nurse, told me the whole matter, which she had cunningly picked out from her mother. The poor girl laid me on her bosom, and fell a-weeping with shame and grief. She apprehended some mischief would happen to me from rude vulgar folks, who might squeeze me to death, or break one of my limbs, by taking me in their hands. She also observed how modest I was in my nature, how nicely I regarded my honour, and what an indignity I should conceive it to be exposed for money as a public spectacle to the meanness of people. To the meanest of the people. She said her papa and mamma had promised that Grildrig should be hers, but now she found they meant to serve her as they did last year, when they pretended to give her a lamb, and yet as soon as it was fat, sold it to a butcher. For my own part, I may truly affirm that I was less concerned with than my nurse. I had a strong hope, which never left me, that I should one day recover my liberty, and as to the And as to the ignominy of being carried about for a monster, I considered myself to be a perfect stranger in the country, and that such a misfortune could never be charged upon me as a reproach if ever I should return to England, since the King of Great Britain himself, in my condition, must have undergone the same distress. My master, pursuant to the advice of his friend, carried me in a box next market day to the neighboring town, and took along with him his little daughter, my nurse, upon a pillion behind him. The box was closed on every side, with a little door for me to go in and out, and a few gimlet holes to let in air. The girl had been so careful as to put the quilt of her baby's bed into it for me to lie down on. However, I was terribly shaken and decomposed in this journey, though it were but half an hour, for the horse went about 40 feet at every step, and trotted so high that the agitation was equal to the rising and falling of a ship in a great storm, but much more frequent. Our journey was somewhat farther than from London to St. Albans. My master alighted at an inn which he used to frequent, and after consulting a while with the innkeeper and making some necessary preparations, he hired the rule trud or crier to give notice through the town of a strange creature to be seen at the sign of the Great Eagle, not so big as a splachnock, an animal in that country very finely shaped, about 6 feet long, and in every part of the body resembling a human creature, which could speak several words and perform 100 diverting tricks. I was placed upon a table in the largest room. Oh, sorry, something got in my eye. Dusty old book. Okay. I was placed upon a table in the largest room of the inn, which might be near 300 feet square. My little nurse stood on a low stool close to the table to take care of me and direct what I should do. My master, to avoid a crowd, would suffer only 30 people at a time to see me. I walked about on the table as the girl commanded. She asked me questions as far as she knew my understanding of the language reached, and I answered them as loud as I could. I turned about several times to the company, paid my humble respects, said they were welcome, and used some other speeches I had been taught. I took up a thimble filled with liquor which Glumdalclitch had given me for a cup, and drank their health. Excuse me. I drew out my hanger and flourished with it after the manner of fencers in England. My nurse gave me a part of a straw, which I exercised as a pike, having learnt the art in my youth. I was that day shown to 12 sets of company, and as often forced to act over and over again the same fopperies, till I was half dead with weariness and vexation. For those who had seen me made such wonderful reports that the people were ready to break down the doors to come in. My master, for his own interest, would not suffer any one to touch me except my nurse, and to prevent danger, benches were set round the table at such a distance as put me out of everybody's reach. However, an unlucky schoolboy aimed a hazelnut directly at my head, which very narrowly missed me. Otherwise, it came with so much violence that it should have infallibly knocked me out my brains, for it was almost as large as a small pumpkin. But I had the satisfaction to see the young rogue well beaten and turned out of the room. My master gave public notice that he would show me again the next market day, and in the meantime he prepared a more convenient vehicle for me, which he had reason enough to do, for I was so tired with my first journey, and with entertaining company for 8 hours together, that I could hardly stand upon my legs or speak a word. It was at least 3 days before I recovered my strength, and that I might have no rest at home, all the neighbouring gentlemen from 100 miles round, hearing of my fame, came to see me at my master's own house. There could not be fewer than 30 persons, with their wives and children, for the country is very populous, and my master demanded the rate of a full room whenever he showed me at home, although it was only to a single family, so that for some time I had but little ease every day of the week, except Wednesday, which is their Sabbath, although I were not carried to the town. 360. I was taken up by a walnut, and I'm not allergic. Anyways, my master, finding how profitable I was like to be, resolved to carry me to the most considerable cities in the kingdom. Having therefore provided himself with all things necessary for a long journey, and settled his affairs at home, he took leave of his wife, and on the 17th of August, 1703, about 2 months after my arrival, we set out for the metropolis, situated near the middle of that empire, and about 3,000 miles distance from our home. My master made his daughter, Glumdalclitch, ride behind him. She carried me on her lap in a box tied about her waist. The girl had lined it on all sides with the softest cloth she could get, well quilted underneath, furnished it with her baby's bed, providing me with linen and other necessities, and made everything as convenient as she could. We had no other company but a boy of the house, who rode after us with the luggage. My master's design was to show me in all the towns by the way, and to step out of the road for 50 or 100 miles to any village or person of quality's house, where he might expect custom. We made an easy journey, of not above 7 or 8 score miles a day, for Glumdalclitch, on purpose to spare me, complained she was tired with the trotting of the horse. She often took me out of my box at my desire, to give me air and show me the country, but always held me fast by a leading string. We passed over 5 or 6 rivers many degrees broader and deeper than the Ganges, and there was hardly a rivulet so small as the Thames at London Bridge. We were 10 weeks in our journey, and I was shown in 18 large towns, besides many villages and private families. On the 26th day of October, we arrived at the metropolis, called in their language Lorbrulgrud, or Pride of the Universe. Oh, it's in 5 minutes. Okay. Hello. Glad you can make it. Welcome, Carrie. The first one to redeem the coin. I got a couple minutes before ads, so I'm going to keep going. We're almost at the end of chapter 2 of Brobdingnag, I believe is the... Oh, you're the second. Aw. Positive energy. You can make it. On the 26th day of October, we arrived at the metropolis called in their language Lorbrulgrud, or Pride of the Universe. My master took a lodging in the principal street of the city, not far from the royal palace, and put out bills in the usual form, containing an exact description of my person and parts. He hired a large room between 300 and 400 feet wide. He provided a table 60 feet in diameter, upon which I was to act my part, and Palisadode? Palisade? Gosh darn it. Dosey-dode, palisade-dode, I don't know. It round 3 feet from the edge, as many high to prevent my falling over. I was shown 10 times a day, to the wonder and satisfaction of all people. I could now speak the language tolerably well, and perfectly understood every word that was spoken to me. Besides, I had learned their alphabet, and could make a shift to explain a sentence here and there. For Glumdalclitch had been my instructor while we were at home, and at leisure hours during our journey. She carried a little book in her pocket, not much larger than Sanson's Atlas. It was a common treatise for the use of young girls, giving a short account of their religion. Out of this she taught me my letters and interpreted the words. Yeah. I mean, I think ad's gonna start pretty soon, so I could look this word up. We've run across a surprising amount, as one, I guess not surprising, an unsurprising amount of old words that just aren't used anymore. And some of the words' spellings in here are off, although they tend to have the meaning of words that we have of similar spelling. Where did I go? Because I'm curious about this word now. Lost it. There it is. Why is it when you mute your phone, it still makes tacking noises? It seems a bit weird. An obsolete form of the word palisaded. Okay, being fortified or enclosed with a palisade, a row of stakes or posts used as fence or defense. A palisade round 3 feet from the edge, and as many high to prevent my falling over. So 3 feet around the whole table, he made like a little barrister. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. They did have a lot back then. Yeah. Yeah, like palisade. But the spelling in this one's off, but it means that. Yeah, the spelling in this one, I think you spelt it right. Yeah, no, you almost spelt it right. The last one would have been Ed. P-A-L-S. My gosh, I can't even spell. P-A-L-I-S-A-D-O-E-D. Weird. The weird words. I was flipping through and I think the book still has it wanting to open automatically to that page, so maybe I can find it. Here. They had a word in here that I was making fun of. Nope, I don't know where it went. They called the people the hominins. It was very much sounded like they were trying to say hominin, but like they just, it's like somebody was slurring and they just sort of trails off the letters. Yeah, we'll run across it later. Hey, gave up halfway. Yeah, they're like, I think it was spelled H-O... It was H-O-U-Y, and then they went M, like H-M-N, and then H-M. It's like hum-hem. It's like you're having a stroke halfway through reading it. Hero. I could have been reading all this time. I'll just start. Chapter 3. The author sent... Yeah, I know. Like, I've been, like, shooting the shit, but I could have been reading. Because, like, I could get some done in a minute. What? No, I can read this in 30 seconds. Chapter 3. The author sent for to court. The queen buys him of his master, the farmer, and presents him to the king. He disputes with his majesty's great scholars, an apartment at court provided for the author. He is in high favor with the queen. He stands up for the honor of his own country. His quarrels with the queen's dwarf. Now the ad started. 5 seconds. I had 5 seconds to spare. I win. I'm gonna drink some water. Yeah, there it is. Oi, him and him. As one does. Ads have begun, so now it's just me and the subscribers. Let's do some of that ASMR. Just the pages. Do you miss this? Do you miss books? It's gonna be really weird for people listening to the YouTube. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can. Hey, if you want to watch the unclipped, who am I talking to? You're subbed, you can hear it. Yeah, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, if it's not obvious. I don't know why I couldn't fall asleep till like 4 a.m. and then I woke up at like 8, so I'm very tired. Oh, look at that. But we're having ads. Oh, yeah. Neat. I like that you have that set up. It'd be funny to me if you had that only set up for me. Ooh, I can watch the ads. Is that a beer ad? Or an Assassin's Creed ad? It's yes, it's both. Get your finances a lift. It's a credit card. Now it's a food ad? Bread. I recently learned that there is a bread thing. How do I explain this? So, Canadian store that I'm not going to say names, you can look this up yourself, along with their bread supplier, has been artificially inflating the price of bread in Canada. This is a weird thing to talk about. Whatever. Ever since, I think they said it was like 2000 and I want to say it was showing it like 2007 to 2010, maybe as early as 2002. You can see the bread prices spiking up until at this point, in comparison to what the pricing should be, it's about double. So, like, in Canada, bread is artificially inflated much more than it needs to be, which is. I kind of suspected that all of our grocery prices are kind of over the top, especially considering we grow the food here. Like, why is it so expensive? It hurts. Some stuff I get, like, you can charge what you want for things like spices and other manufactured goods that you can't acquire anywhere else, but like when they're charging like $20 for a bag of potatoes when I could just like throw some in the dirt, it hurts, especially since we're like the major manufacturer of potatoes. And during the pandemic, when we weren't really doing well with our exports, we were getting ads saying buy Canadian potatoes because they were showing pictures of like massive warehouses overflowing with potatoes. So I'm like, where are all these potatoes? Why are they so expensive still in the store? Like, so painful. Are the ads done? 30 more seconds to rant about potatoes. Don't even get me started on onions, no. I actually don't know how many onions we produce. We do a lot of tomatoes. Don't get me started on tomatoes. Canada produces a surprising amount in our hothouses and greenhouses. But again, like buying a tomato here is like, what were they, like $3 or $4 for one tomato? Like, what? Welcome back. Bread is supposed to be a staple, yeah. Right? I find that the easiest way to compare a country's, because it's, how do you explain this? The dollar value doesn't have comparison to the pound or to the yen, because, like, for example, to buy, I don't know, like a treat or like a bun or something over in Japan is like 500 to 1,000 yen. But then you do a comparison translation. It's like, okay, if I want to take $1 Canadian and transmit it into yen, I think it's like 900 yen to a dollar. And then similar thing with the pound. If I tried to buy bread in Europe using Canadian dollars, considering the conversion rate, I'd probably be paying like $4 to $8 for a loaf of bread. Whereas in Canada, like, I find the baseline is whatever you can buy a loaf of bread for, consider that like $1, so to speak, like a single, like the roundedness of the currency, because it's supposed to be like a basic necessity. So whatever spending value or currency power a country has, like let's say it only takes like half a pound of European or whatever to purchase bread, that is equatable to how much effort it takes to earn that to buy the bread. Does that make sense? It's a weird tangent. But of course, until we have issues like bread scandals where they inflate the price of bread, then kind of goes out the window. And then you've got the problem too, where some countries bread is more expensive, whereas there's other, because culturally they would eat something other than bread. So, Sorry, just zoned out there. Bread is a staple, but less, yeah, doesn't really equate to buying power. Others, yeah. Start growing wheat in the. We honestly, genuinely, I roommates and stuff looked into growing wheat and stuff, and unfortunately, you need a lot of property in order for you to grow that much grain to actually have enough to make it, like, to make enough for flour and stuff. But totally growing stuff, yeah. There's potatoes are a good one. Like, they're pretty dense starch. Ironically, I don't really like potatoes. But yeah, we've got a garden out here. I'm actually growing a ton of tomatoes this year, or trying to. It's still, excuse me, it's still like pretty much winter out there. Like nights we're getting like averaging between 5 Celsius to like -15 still, depending on the weather. And it's still pretty cold during the day, but I got them growing indoors. I got little sprouts. I'm hoping to get enough to can and do stuff. You process it and cook it and bake it. Like, damn. Well, I mean, I do cut the bread middleman out because I do bake bread, so that's saved a lot. It's like if you just get flour, and it's not that hard, honestly. We got a bread maker, so I just have to throw the ingredients in and reset it and then pull it out, shape it, and let it rise and all that stuff. It's pretty easy. Guess got into a routine. Though I only really know how to make one recipe. I want to try to learn how to make like proper French bread, but you got to be more particular about the rising time, fermentation, and humidity, and that's kind of a step up. Should probably get back to the book. There we go. Depends on how much it costs in terms of energy usage and time, of course. Yeah, good bread. Well, yeah. The frequent labors I underwent every day made, in a few weeks, a very considerable change in my health. The more my master got by me, the more insatiable he grew. I had quite lost my stomach and was almost reduced to a skeleton. The farmer observed it, and concluding I must die soon, resolved to make as good a hand of me as he could. While he was thus reasoning and resolving with himself, a sardral or gentleman usher came from court, commanding my master to carry me immediately thither, for the diversions of the queen and her ladies. Some of the latter had already been to see me and reported strange things of my beauty, behavior, and good sense. Her Majesty and those who attended her were beyond measure delighted with my demeanor. It is a V-Read stream now? A bread stream. Oh, we're just gonna talk about bread. I mean, it could. I think my earliest experimenting with bread was living in like the Chetwynd, a really small town where I grew up, and somebody locally, I can't even remember where we acquired it, they gifted me Amish bread starter stuff. So it sort of works like a sourdough where you have the jar that you like put flour and some water, and then you just every week you're supposed to like take out half, make bread, and then put it back in the fridge. The problem is I was still going to school at the time, so we didn't eat, like it has a weird taste. Like sourdough has its own taste, but this stuff had like a weirdly sweet fermented, like I can't describe it. I've never tasted anything like it and never tasted anything since. It's not bad, but it's not something you really make sandwiches or things with. It's just bread backstory. Let's go. Yeah. So what happened was, I tried my best to keep up with it, but after like, I think it was like 3 or 4 months, I personally couldn't really stomach it anymore. And it was getting to the point where I was just like feeding it and then taking half of it and dumping it in the toilet instead of having to bake it. I mean, if I knew now, like then when I knew now, I probably would have just quartered the recipe and had a much smaller thing that I would have only maybe had to use like 2 or 3 like tablespoons or even like maybe a quarter cup of flour. But this thing was like a monster. We were keeping it in like a Ziploc bag, and it was just I'd be like studying and doing my schoolwork, and then I'd come home and I'd be like, I gotta deal with it before it explodes all over the fridge. So I ended up just tossing the whole thing and giving up and realizing that this is not something I can do right now. Yeah, it was pretty much like, feed me. Oh, that was a time. But I don't even know where one acquires it, because I looked up and apparently sourdough is just like you take your flour, your sugar, and your yeast and stuff, and you try to balance the natural fermentation of flour and yeast where it creates an acidic environment so that the only thing that can survive in that environment is the yeast, and thus it outperforms anything else that could potentially be bad, like mold and stuff like that. So it's just fermented flour. I have no idea what the hell was in the Amish bread. Like, I don't know what this starter is made of and why it tasted that way. Homebrewing kombucha. I I don't like the taste of it. I don't. So like, all the power to you if you do it. Like, tell me how that turns out. I'd be terrified of it exploding. Pretty much anything fermented, I'm like, are you gonna like stay? It does have that. I don't even. It's not even the vinegary part. It's that funk. It's like, I don't know. It feels like I'm drinking something that I shouldn't be drinking. Like if you had tea and like juice that you left out too long in the sun and it got all like powdery and like foamy and like foggy, and you're like, I'm gonna drink this. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, the bottled depot nose note. Imagine somebody trying to make something like that and they get the wrong jar. Yeah, no, it's fine to like it. Like I like weird stuff too. I'm a huge fan of like sauerkraut and pickles and anything like that. In the pickled vinegary category, I like. So like liver too and blue cheese. Like I got a weird flavor profile. Sometimes sip straight white vinegar just to remind me I'm alive. Do you drink pickle juice? Cause like definitely could understand that. Or love anything pickled. Yeah. I recently got to try kimchi. I really like that and decided to get a jar of it. Another thing I want to learn how to ferment. I learned though, apparently kimchi you've got to like ferment in a fridge. Like there's two ways you can do it, long or short. Sort of like how sauerkraut, you put it on the counter. You can put kimchi on the counter, but eventually you have to put it back in the fridge and store it for a period of time. Or you can do the long one where it just ferments in the fridge. But even after you buy kimchi, apparently it continues to ferment. Pickled eggs. I've never had pickled eggs. I've looked at them in the store. Usually they sit by the pickled herring that I get every Christmas as like traditional thing. But I've always been curious, but also kind of scared to get them. Pickled asparagus sounds really good. Beans, absolutely. I love spicy pickled beans. I've had those the sweet pickled onions. They're not bad, but I don't really like sweet pickle. Girlfriend kind of crashes out when I eat the pickled eggs, though. Does it make your breath funk, or does it just look nasty when you eat them? Like, what do you mean? This has just become like a hangout. It's just eating them. How do you eat them? Are you like inhaling them like a steak or something? Just chatting, that's true. We kind of went off the deep end, but I'm totally for this. With a happy face. I changed the book title. Ceequin gets distracted and goes off the deep end about pickles. I want to know how you eat these eggs, though. Like, don't leave me hanging like this. He sees me eating them and gets like a secondhand sensory ick from the rubbery texture. Okay, I guess I could see that. That's kind of why I look at them suspiciously, because they definitely look like they're rubbery. Are they rubbery like all the way through? Like, I once tried making what are they called? They're like tea eggs, where you like boil the eggs, then crack the shells. You don't take them off, you just crack them, and you make this sort of like, I don't know if they would call it, I guess it's tea. Dark tea, a bunch of spices like anise, cloves, peppercorns, and then you steep them in there, and it creates like this intense flavor that seeps into the outer layer of the egg, depending on how long you steep them. They get a little rubbery, but not very. So like, I cannot, like, does the pickling process make the eggs like what's the texture, like gummy bears? Like, how rubbery are we talking? With just soy sauce, fucking yeah. Right, soy sauce does go in it too. I gotta make more of those. Easter's coming up. Like, make them look like rabbits that have died. Anyways. Makes it more bouncy. That's true. I mean, when you boil eggs and then you just put them in the fridge, they do also get kind of that texture. Caramel white's kind of chalky yolk. Huh. He was realizing he can never do adjust chatting to. Oh no! What do you mean too powerful? It's only because I only got like 3 hours of sleep last night. Oh god, Carrie. Little erasery, huh? I wonder if it'd be like, if they, I would be curious to try them, but the only time I've ever seen them in a store are these massive jars, and I don't think if I could handle, if they're not good, eating 12 eggs. I just want like one. Bars just goes in the bar. What do you want to drink? Give me the pickled eggs. Do you want a shot with that? No, just the eggs. I want the eggs straight. This town's small enough, though. I might actually end up see somebody that I know. Just throw some eggs in brine for a week. Oh, like, kind of brine. Like, just vinegar, salt. Did I just take a jar of pickles and throw an egg in there? When I was an egg, I had 4 dozen eggs. Wait, was the IBS because of the eggs? Is this something I should avoid? How many of these eggs did you eat? The malt vinegar ones, like 1 part malt, 1 part vinegar, and some salt. Oh, I never thought about doing that. What is malt? Is that just like... I have no idea what that is. I can imagine the flavor profile in my head, and it's similar to molasses, but not. Isn't malt like the leftover, like from some sort of alcohol production? The brown vinegar you can get at fish and chip shops. What's the malt part? Like, I know what the vinegar is. We don't really have any fish and chip shops around here, do we? Chestershire? Or, as you spelled, Worcester sauce? Yeah, oh my god. Do you want it pronounced Worcestershire or Worcestershire? The word. Worcester sauce. The worst sauce. Literally just called malt vinegar. I mean, like, you can need you back on the bread stories. The next time I tried making bread, it came out flat. Worcester. I struggled a lot. I learned actually why my bread all sucked. It was the flour I was using, and I honestly just only discovered that like 3 years ago. I was just using all-purpose flour, and it just doesn't form gluten because it doesn't have that high of a protein level in it. So wash your sister's sauce. No. Please don't tell me you intentionally said that the wash your sister sauce would have a fishy flavor. That's horrible. You need to go to... Don't make me go back to... Oh, Worcestershire sauce is made with garlic, onions, and fish. I didn't know that. I never looked into it. I guess I did know it had fish in it because it's one of the, it's my sister has severe allergies, so there's a bunch of foods that we weren't allowed to have in the house, and I know Worcestershire was one of them. Pantomime slamming the desk in frustration. Don't get me banned. Kappas will take my mic privileges away. Or sorry, Hero will. Oh, I just noticed Kappas is typing stuff up there. There's like a million ingredients. He's just subtly commenting in the video's chat. I know, but I have been found out. Kappas has been having a side commentary. Have you been doing that while I was reading too, or is this just a new thing you decided to do? Just you being type faster. Distracted. Okay. Ow, I bit my tongue. I'm really giggly right now. Oh, you need that. Oh my gosh, pardon me. Chatting, yeah. I've run out of, I don't know what to talk about now. We're talking about eggs, bread, pickles, growing stuff, honey. I'm staring at Kathis. Book? Yeah, I could go back to the book. Till we go off on a tangent again. That's all good. Where the hell were we? He was getting taken by the Queen's ladies. That's what it was. Resolved to make good and soon die. Carrier and ladies. There we go. Talked about his behavior and good sense. Her Majesty and those who attended her were beyond measure delighted with my demeanor. I fell on my knees and begged the honor of kissing her imperial foot. But this gracious princess held out her little finger towards me after I was set on the table, which I embraced in both arms and put the tip of it with the utmost respect to my lips. She asked me some general questions about my country and my travels, which I answered as distinctly and as in as few words as I could. She asked whether I would be content to live at court. I bowed down to the board of the table, and humbly answered that I was my master's slave, but if I were at my own disposal, I should be proud to devote my life to Her Majesty's service. She then asked my master whether he was willing to sell me at a good price. He, who apprehended that I could not live a month, was readily enough to part with me, and demanded 1,000 pieces of gold, which were ordered him on the spot, each piece being about the bigness of 800 moid. The hell is a moidor? Moidors. But allowing for the proportion of all things between that country and Europe, and the high price of gold among them, this was hardly so great a sum as 1,000 guineas would be in England. Excuse me. I then said to the Queen, oh my god. Pardon me. I then said to the Queen, since I was now Her Majesty's most humble creature and vassal, I must beg the favor that Glitch. I'm just gonna call her Glitch. I keep saying it anyways, and it doesn't really matter. Glitch, who had always tended me with so much care and kindness, and knew how to do it so well, might be admitted into her service and continue to be my nurse and instructor. Her Majesty agreed to my petition, and easily got the farmer's consent, who was glad enough to have his daughter preferred at court, and the poor girl herself was not able to hide her joy. My late master withdrew, bidding me farewell and saying he had left me in good service, to which I replied not a word, only making him a slight bow. Those emojis that you send are so dark. Pardon me, Your Majesty, I spent a fortnight baking bread without the chance for sleep. Yeah. I beg your pardons, gracious. The queen observed my coldness, and when the farmer was gone out of the apartment, asked me the reason. I made bold to tell her majesty that I owed no other obligation to my late master than his not dashing out the brains of a poor harmless creature found by chance in his field, which obligation was amply recomposed by the gain he had made in showing me through half the kingdom, and the price he had now sold me for. That the life I had since led was laborious enough to kill an animal of 10 times my strength, that my health was much impaired by the continual drudgery of entertaining the rabble every hour of the day, and that if my master had not thought my life in danger, her majesty would not have got so cheap a bargain. But as I was out of all fear of being ill-treated under the protection of so great and good an empress, the ornament of nature, the darling of the world, the delight of her subjects, the phoenix of creation, so I hoped my late master's apprehensions would appear to be groundless, for I had already found my spirits revived by the influence of her most august presence. You made it bigger. Oh, thank you. Your reading voice is delightful. I kept getting compliments like that, and I thought, might as well try reading. I think the first time was I was working at fucking A&W, and I was just doing the drive-thru, and somebody came up, they're like, your voice is really nice. I'm like, thanks. Yeah, if you wanted to listen to the Narnia series, I noticed that I've got a different cadence depending on the author, and I believe that is entirely to do with how they structure their sentences. It just flows differently, so that's fun. Yeah, I know. It was weird, but I figured I might as well roll with it. A couple other people have mentioned it, so I thought might as well try reading. I like reading, so. Wonder if it will let me gigantify my own stream. What is gigantify, and how did you make it so big? Did it charge you to gigantify? If you could pay yourself money, I feel like knowing how corporations work, Twitch would take a portion of it and you would be out some. But anyways, they don't. You get free Gigantify. Congratulations. Only you. I had quite lost my what? I need to scroll down. August presence. Gullification, yes. You've been I can say this without looking up the word. Brobdingnag. You've been brobdingnagged. My gosh. Oh, we've reached page 100. Congratulations. This was the sum of my speech, delivered with great improprieties and hesitation. The latter part was altogether framed in the style particular to that people, whereof I learned some phrases from Glumdalglitch while she was carrying me to court. Queen, giving great allowances for my defectiveness in speaking, was however surprised at so much wit and good sense in so diminutive an animal. She took me in her own hand and carried me to the king, who was then retired to his cabinet. His Majesty, a prince of much gravity and austere countenance, not well observing my shape, at first view, asked the queen after a cold manner how long it was since she grew fond of a splachnuck. For such it seems he took me to be, as I lay upon my breast in her majesty's right hand. But this princess, who... I keep seeing ads out of the corner of my eye. But this princess, who was infinite deal of wit and humor, set me gently on my feet upon the scrutoire. I'm assuming something either the armoire or like a little chaise or something. I don't know. I'm not looking that up. It's a piece of furniture. And commanded me to give his majesty an account of myself, which I did in a very few words. And Glumdalglitch, who attended at the cabinet door and could not endure I should be out of her sight, being admitted, confirmed that all had passed from my arrival to her father's house. The king, although he is a learned person as any in his dominions, yes, having been educated in the study of philosophy and particularly mathematics, Gulliver seems to really, Swift seems to really like the mathematics, because this will be the second time they've brought this up in particular. Anyways, particularly mathematics, yet when he observed my shape exactly, he saw me walk erect before I began to speak, conceived I might be a piece of clockwork, which was in that country arrived to a very great perfection. Yeah. He mocks philosophy, touts mathematics, and has crazy ideas about the world and what things might be able to exist in it. Clockwork, very great perfection, contrived by some ingenious artist. But when he heard my voice and found what I delivered to be regular and rational, he could not conceal his astonishment. He also holds his character in very high esteem, and his character, I don't necessarily. He's kind of a Mary Sue because he doesn't seem to have any particular flaws. I just hope it's not a self-insert. But I mean, it's the 1700s. If you want to get off with a self-insert in your own fan fiction, you made money off it at least. He was by no means satisfied with the relation I gave him of the manner I came into his kingdom, but thought it a story concerted between Glumdalglitch and her father, who had taught me a set of words to make me sell at a better price. Upon this imagination, he put several other questions to me, and still received rational answers, no otherwise defective than by a foreign accent and imperfect knowledge of the language, with some rustic phrases which I had learned at the farmer's house, and did not suit the polite style of a court. His Majesty sent for 3 great scholars who were then in the weekly waiting, according to the custom in that country. These gentlemen, after they had examined my shape with much nicety, were of different opinions concerning me. They all agreed that I could not be produced according to the regular laws of nature, because I was not framed with the capacity of preserving my life, either by swiftness or climbing of trees or digging holes in the earth. They observed by my teeth, which they viewed with great exactness, that I was a carnivorous animal, yet most quadrupeds being an overmatch for me, and field mice with some others too nimble, they could not imagine how I should be able to support myself, unless I fed upon snails and other insects, which they offered by many learned arguments to evince that I could not possibly do. One of these virtuosi seemed to think that I might be an embryo or abortive birth, but these opinions were rejected by the other 2, who observed my limbs to be perfect and finished, and that I had lived several years, as it was manifest from my beard, the stumps whereof they plainly discovered through a magnifying glass. They would not allow me to be a dwarf, because my littleness was beyond all degrees of comparison, for the queen's favorite dwarf, the smallest ever known in that kingdom, was nearly 30 feet high. Why is this queen collecting small people? I just realized this is kind of weird. Her favorite dwarf, this small man she immediately purchased. Okay. After much debate, they concluded unanimously that I was only Replum Skalkath, which is interpreted literally lusus nature, a determination exactly agreeable to the modern philosophy of Europe, whose professors, disdaining the old evasion of occult causes, whereby the followers of Aristotle endeavored in vain to disguise their ignorance, have invented this wonderful solution of all difficulties to the unspeakable advancement of human knowledge. Excuse me, what did I just read? That I was only Replum Skalkath, interpreted literally lusus nature, determination exactly agreeable to the modern philosophy of Europe, whose professors, disdaining the old evasion of occult causes, whereby the followers of Aristotle. I'm trying to understand what I just read. Modern philosophy. Oh, there's chat. No flaws isn't necessarily Mary suing, but it could be argued that everyone fawns over him. Then again, he's a homunculus freak and is getting passed around with little agency of his own. As for self-insert, yeah, probably, but I think it's part of... I totally agree. It comes across... because it's a journal. So, like, the story is supposed to be Gulliver Travels writing his own journal. So even, like, when he goes to the Lilliputian lands and he discusses how they seem to not have the civilities and that they represent similarities to how the nobles of Europe and France seem to bicker and have silliness. Like, he's framing it from the perspective of the explorer who is viewing this, so it comes across obviously as favorable to the writer. Because why would you write in the journal, "Today I suck"? Most people, I hope, don't do that. I remember watching a movie where you had the famous dwarf in the movies and was like, "Zai, the smallest man alive." Oh, that is not true. If you see there is someone smaller than you, Oh yeah, this is a sus box as much as a fairy tale. Yeah, there's been a lot of asterisks and explanations at the bottom, especially in the Lilliput ones, that had a lot of. I wouldn't have had an issue reading it if it was strictly political in history, but there was some stuff in there that might have been racist because of the way that the sentences were structured, but unfortunately the terms I don't know because they're obviously dated, so I don't quite follow it, and I'd rather not take that risk of reading something like that. So I just kind of been skipping the asterisk ones unless they're specifically and only related to Gulliver's in the context of this is what happened in the events after and what we don't discuss in the journals. But that's kind of the risk with reading these old books. I found that out because I wanted to read Jules Verne, because come on, Journey to the Center of the Earth, um, 80 Days in a Balloon, Around the World in 80 Days, all that stuff. But I discovered, much to my misfortune, that it is really racist, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I need to stop reading this for a little while. And plus, yeah, I thought Gulliver's Travels was dry, but Jules Verne, I literally was like staring at the pages. I know, I really want to read because I love the fantastical element of way that they combine like the European exploration of the world and seeing the far lands and wonder and the ideology that there is magic and unknown. It's just you need to go out and discover it. Like that aspect of it is really charming, and I like that. But it is steeped in the culture of the time, and it's... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, Warwick Davis was the dwarf mini TV series, 1996. But in modern context, and yikes, yeah, like I think I remember reading a little bit of Around the World in 80 days or whatever it was, 90 days. And it wasn't, I didn't think it was that bad, but I tried reading the balloon or something where he's supposed to travel over Africa, and maybe that was red flag for me, but it's really, really, really bad. It's so bad. I'm like reading as I think I stopped when they had like gotten to a point where they had landed the balloon to go down and speak to the locals, and the way it wasn't even like the perception of the author's view of them, but it was like the way that they described and they had the characters that were the locals acting was really bad. I don't know what H.G. Wells is if who? I'm sorry. Let me know who that is. God, sorry, Hero is doing. Why is Hero giving me the angry face? Hero's mad that I'm not reading. It's awful, but I try to think of it like it's Martians and divorce myself from real world context. But yeah. Yeah, like what I might do is I might try to read Jules Verne's, because I mean, like, if I get through it, I'd still like to read the story, and I might just skip over the parts that are bad and just be like, they are going to stop, they're going to explore, and we're just going to pick up after. And I could probably get away that time. Oh, the time machine. Oh, that'd be cool. Like I remember watching the one of the movies that was tied to it. I didn't even know that this series and that author existed. And of course, War of the Worlds is a classic. I didn't realize they did books. Yeah, I can't remember which version of the Time Machine, because they did a couple movies, right? At least I know there's at least two. I can't remember which one. How to describe the one I watched. Oh my gosh, you just gave me a weird memory. There was somebody told me about a book series. It was like The Time Traveler or something. Oh gosh, what was it? A lot of the story had to do with how he was traveling back and forth in time and how it was affecting like his wife and stuff. Island of Dr. Moreau. Is that also by H.G. Wells? I've heard the name, but I've not read their stuff. Another book by Wells. Are they safe to read? If, like, is it first? I don't know. Again, I don't know much about him. When did he pass? Because if he died post or pre, I think it's 1973. It's 70 years after the author passed away. Yeah, because if it's beyond that, like I'm certain I can find a text available online that I could read, and I wouldn't mind. And then I'd be available to, because it would be free, at least in Canada. Our copyright licensing would make it available for me to read legally. But the contents, how do I put it? Is it bad again? It is ruffle some feathers. We'll take it one at a time. I'll try the Jules Verne. I might stick with one that's more, I assume, safer. I think 1,000 Leagues Under the Sea or whatever is, I think, safe. Or so Journey to the Center of the Earth. I think I should be okay with those. And we'll just take it one step at a time. Kira's been wanting me to read, I think he mentioned the Del Toro series, but Penguin Publishing has flat out said no to all of that, so don't want to get in trouble with anybody about these. So anything Penguin published is kind of off the table, unless we can find an original stuff, so should be okay. I made a joke saying I could read the Lolcats Bible. That one's funny. Somebody committed to that bit before we had, I'm pretty sure, generative AI text for it, so it's impressive. I made a joke years ago. I was reading it in a voice chat of our Discord server to somebody, and they liked it, but fell off with it because time. But I could probably do it. Ruffle a different sort of feathers. I don't mind ruffling those feathers. It's like, why are you making a mockery of this? I'm not. I'm spreading the word of lolcats. Not the mic cord. Oops. Oh no, and I put my book flat down. Gross. I might break the spine. Yeah. Why is GOT censored? GOT. You didn't censor that, did you? No, I know you didn't, but like some people can add asterisks if they want to. It looks like the chat censored GOT for some reason. Saw the Matrix? What happened? Wait, Hero. Got stuff visible behind in the bar. I don't know how to explain it. There's like a blue thing. No. You remember where you were typing? Yeah. Apparently, oh, your avatar had like menus and boxes flashing around it. My sock puppet is ascending. It's apotheosising. How many pages have I left? I probably should try. Okay. Wait, are we in an ad? Okay, cool. I can keep going. I still don't know exactly what this sentence means. I've been following the book and I've had no issues up until this point. And of course the sailing section, because I don't know how boats work. But I don't know what they're trying to say. He was discussing, they concluded unanimously, because they were investigating him, that his origin or his method of existence is what they're calling in their language Relplum Scalcath, which he's saying Latin is lusus nature, which again, natura means similar to nature or being or essence. I don't know what lusus means in Latin though. And then he says a determination exactly agreeable to the modern philosophy of Europe. whose professors disdaining the old evasion of causes whereby the followers of Aristotle endeavored in vain to disguise their ignorance, have invented this wondrous solution of all difficulties, the unspeakable advancement of human knowledge. I don't know if he's mocking modern science or if he's saying modern science is better and that they've come up with a similar reason. I think I'll just give up. Hey, did you know that if you type your password? Yeah, don't do that. Don't type your password out. Shut up, hero. I fell for that when I was little. I was just really lucky that my password was a sentence. I was really little at the time. I didn't know. I was gullible too. As I tried to play it off too. I was like, I said it, and it was like I typed out a sentence without any space bars. And then I like added to it later in the sentence, like as if I was part of it, like I was trying to say something. Wait, no. Oh yeah, I guess it is. No. Oh, are you ahead of us? Okay, so I guess for you it'll be April 1st tomorrow. I was like, wait, no, I want a prank. I'm not ready yet. I've got a stupid prank I ran across. I thought I could do it. I'm gonna prep it, obviously, but I'm gonna empty out the entire fridge because I gotta clean it. It's springtime and it needs a clean, but I'm gonna take every single thing out of the fridge, so in the morning when they open the door, it's just gonna be empty. No ketchup, no sauces, nothing, just bare. And I feel it's funny to me. But I'm gonna stick everything in a cooler and put some ice packs in there. And I'll make sure that when they're ready to do their breakfast stuff, that they have access to their milk and things. I'm not a jerk about it, but just thought the shock would be alarming. No way I'm opening all the cabinets. There's too many. I mean, I could take all the spoons away. If they open the fridge and there's no milk, and then they go to the drawer, there's no spoons, they're like, I give up on the day. The whole house, they wake up, everything's gone. It'd be easier to just move them into a different location than move the house. Yeah, no spoons. The day is canceled. So I just like, it'd be funny if April Fool's was like a holiday because everyone's got to recover. I remember in middle school, I had two teachers that I couldn't tell if they liked each other or hated each other because our middle school had like the whole school or grades like divvied up into two groups, like mascots. Like normally schools have a mascot. Our middle school had two mascots, and like there was like two homeroom teachers for the grades. So like it was like grades 7 and 8, like the worst time to put all the kids together. They're no longer agreeable, like little kids they won't listen to anymore, but they haven't reached a point where they can stop being little annoying brats. So you have all these grades 7 and 8s all stuck in one freaking school. Anyways, it was nightmare years. I don't even remember what we freaking learned. Woodworking. Learned how to fucking woodwork and go to band. Anyways, so we had like two middle school teachers, and they were like the homeroom teachers of both the 7 and 8 grades, but like of their distinctive mascots or whatever the hell. And I don't know if it was like they were doing it on purpose as a theme thing, or if it was just like an actual issue, because like they would prank each other, not on April Fool. Like April Fools got real bad, but like just because, like one had duct tape the teacher's entire desk, including the chair, the rolly chair, into the desk. So like, you know, one of those big, you would expect a table with drawers on either side and whatnot. They pushed the chair in and just duct tape around and around and around. So it was just like this solid mass of silver. And then in retaliation, the other teacher did it to their car. So like, it feels like this might have been actual hostility. And then I remember one teacher, our homeroom teacher, had like, yeah, right? Coming from a school with a firm tradition of holding trial and hanging for old man winter every year, this is normal school fare. Carry on. That can damage paint. I know, right? Another thing is, I remember this, because she said this to the class, is, um, she had made brownies and had brought coffee to the staff room. And he came by and he was like, I don't feel good. Did you put something in the brownies? And she just smiled. And then he left. And she looked at us and she's like, he thinks I put X-Lax in the brownies. Joke's on him, it's in the coffee. And I feel like that really crosses some lines legally. So, like, again, I don't know their interaction because they went back and forth at it, but I feel like maybe being around these 7th, 8th graders might have unscrewed some stuff. Right. On a side note, our computer teacher was our band teacher, and he was really cool. He was also our librarian. Huh. And shop class was horrifying. Plot twist. They were exes. They could be, for all I know. Like, they gave off that vibe like they're married couples or they're siblings, or there was a weird chemistry there for sure. They was way too obsessed with each other. Yeah. That brought back a weird memory. Completely forgot about middle school. You had 2 high school teachers. Wait, yeah, no. Of course. I realize it's you typing here. We went to the same high school in the end there. Just one really fast person with a fake beard and a hat. No, him and his wife. There was this ongoing joke with the wife. She had the same set of keys since she started working, and her door would progressively get harder to open, and she would joke saying when the key wore down, she'd stop going, like that's when she would retire. She kept saying things like, and again, this, like, I didn't grow up there, but like my family was from there, so she kept going on about like, I've probably taught your parents, and I've got a generational gap with my mom and my dad and myself. Like, my mom was going through menopause when I was like 5, so yeah. So she would make this joke about like she's taught all of our parents and stuff, and I'm just sitting there like, you went to school with my dad probably, and or one of my uncles. That's poetic, the key thing, right? And then I think she did retire. She's already retired, like she's fairly old. She was a nice teacher. I liked her. She did our biology or pretty much all of our science classes in the high school. It was actually the only school I've ever done dissections at. Every other science class, they just gave us diagrams. I don't know why that school could source them out. Whatever. She's old. She had connections. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure she's retired now. She is. Oh, the other thing too, which was really adorable, is she had like little Beanie Babies, like, of animals. She had like a collection because, again, biology class. So anytime that students would gift her something, it would usually be a Beanie Baby she didn't have, and so she like displayed all the little animals and stuff, and that's so cute. And she would show off the ones that got sent to her from like students that had already like graduated and stuff, and it was just really sweet. And her husband taught history class, so I think they were like 2 doors down. Like, you come out the hallway, you go down. It's like pretty much, it's a small school. Like, it's a really, really small town. Like, there's 2 grocery stores in that town where they're across the street from each other, and they would actively compete against each other's prices. Kind of small. Everybody knew each other, sort of thing, so it was very sweet. And so when she retired, I think a couple years later, I heard that he pretty much retired too. That was a weird tangent. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's my hometown, not that place, but my hometown is really weird. Like, so that was the middle school. The The high school was also very unhinged, but this is due to the students. I got these stories mostly from my sister, my eldest sister. Every year before graduation, there is a routine, and I bet there's lots of high schools that do this, that they would prank the last little months of high school, especially students that already know that they've completed their courses and that they're going to graduate regardless of whether they get good grades or whatnot at the end. Um, there, this one again, I'm very concerned about. My sister told me that all of the girls in the grad class had kidnapped the boys. Like, I assume what they did is they seduced them and then got them, but like, they grabbed them, they took their clothes off, and they handcuffed them to the fence outside the school. That is like, oh my, what? Um, but then another prank a year later, which is honestly impressive, is somehow, yeah, right? Somehow the students had gotten, because there's home ec, right? They had gotten all of the washers and dryers and ovens out of the home ec room, and put them on the roof of the school. This is not a section of the roof where you can like it's not talking about breaking and entering and then getting up to, those roof accesses. No, this is just like there's a section of the building that just got a slightly flattened plane right before the slope, like with shingles and stuff. They got them up there. This thing was probably at least 15 to 20 feet off the ground. I don't know. And in one night, too. Suffice to say, after those two incidences, the school started to really crack down on the pranking, pretty much saying that if you're caught doing anything like that, you will not be allowed to graduate. I think the year after that, the biggest thing I saw, which is, again, not a bad thing, this one, much, much tamer, is they just, like, cement glued about, I don't even know how many were, a ton of pennies into their grad year, just outside the front door. You could not get them up. Trust me, you're talking in a school of high school kids. They could not pry those suckers off the cement. Oh my gosh. I think the problem is the town has literally no entertainment. It's because it's about 45 minutes away from a much larger town. So that larger town has like the mall. It has the movie theaters, the game stuff, this water slide, So any activities that tried to start in my hometown, they'd go out of business because the already established town over had better options. So people who wanted to do fun stuff would just go over there. They also had like water parks and things like that and festivals. My hometown had a movie theater. Like not a movie theater, sorry, a movie store. The only entertainment in the whole place was go and buy and rent movies. Oh yeah, and a pool. A curling rink. I'm trying to think, was there anything else? Pool, curling rink. There was the hockey rink. I'm trying to remember. I went there once. A long time ago. Oh, we're in ads now. Do you really count? You got a bunch of high schoolers. You think that the library is going to entertain them? And cadets is not entertainment. I mean, you got some unruly high schoolers, you could send them to boot camp, but like, not willingly. But yeah, you're right about the pool. I completely forgot about that, which is weird because I used to go there all the time. Again, because there's nothing else to do. That skateboard park did not count. Up until no, that was the nice one. That was the one they did in the later years. The other skateboard park was like kind of downtown behind a large, like, kind of warehousey building, like an old timey building that never got torn down. And it was in bad states. Like, I think there was like one side ramp and like a dip section, and there was graffiti all over. And if you wanted to actually do stuff, you really didn't want to go there because it was a hangout for bad people. Like, not bad people, but like, you're probably gonna get your ass kicked. Also, my hometown, I don't want to go into too much detail about stuff, but like, the police community there was really not good. Like, they would, for example, catch kids smoking pot. They would confiscate the pot, and then they would hotbox their cop car. That sort of stuff. In the middle of the night, and Hero can attest to this. Wait, no, you weren't there when it happened. Whatever. There was one Greyhound station up on the hill or whatever, so in the middle of the night, Hero was coming down to visit me from up in the little town where he was living. Yeah, right? So I was walking in the middle of the night, probably close to, because the bus only arrives at like 2 times. It's like 11 in the middle of the night, or 3 in the morning. So I'm walking along the long stretch of road that goes through this town, because it's a middle of the highway type place, so you just stop to get gas and keep going. Fun, right? And cop cars were drag racing. Busted a bog in front of you. So like, I was walking and they were, 2 of them just tires screeching, no lights on, and they turned the bank on the far end, and that's where the police station is. So they went to the police station, and then I get a little bit farther, like 2 or 3 blocks, because I'm walking, and then I hear the screeching again as they come right back out to 2 of them and go back the way they came, up the stretch of road that goes, it's like straight to the town and goes over the hill. And then a little bit later, they came screeching back in. Yeah. So after I met Hero at the bus station, and because there's no taxi service in town, so there's no bus routes, no taxi service, so everything's walking. I'm walking back with Hero. We got his luggage, he's got his backpack. He's tired because he's been on the bus for like 13 hours, because it's the longest freaking ride. 18 hours, I'm sorry. So we're walking down. We finally get down the freaking hill. Pretty much to get from the bus station all the way to my house is all the other side of the town. But this town has a farm in the middle of it. Like, somebody owns property there and they're not selling it to anyone. So the road that's there has to go around it. So you gotta go, you can't even walk a straight line through town. You gotta go down, to the side, down, around, past the police station, down the main road, and then hit the main highway road that goes through, and then all the way down to my place. So we were walking at about that point, in the middle of the night, and a cop car comes rolling up and starts asking us questions like, "You'd rather have a weed-hungry cop than a trigger-happy one?" Yeah. They never seemed mean, but I guess I can't really judge it, because like at the time I'm like grew up there. I'm like 16-year-old girl younger, so I'm glad I didn't have bad experiences with cops, I guess. Wouldn't put it past that town. But yeah, no, he like stopped and he was like asking us questions, and I'm just tired. I want to go home. Like, at this time, I think I was probably like 15 or 16 at the time of the visit, and I'm like, we just got off the Greyhound, we're just trying to get home, and he like kept asking questions, and he like followed us for like 2 blocks, and I thought, for example, that like he was just making sure that we were safe, like, and I was like, oh, that's nice of him. But then the moment we turned off down like one of the streets that go into the housing, which there's still significant amounts of like path from us to home, he took off. So he wasn't watching us for our benefit, because if that was the case, he would have watched us until I got into the house. Right? So I don't know why he was just like weirdly stalking us like that. Every interaction has been terrible and aggressive vibes. Yeah, no, okay, so I know why the police force in my hometown is bad. I can't, you know what, I don't live there anymore. My hometown is where the local, like, after the Mounties are trained, they get sent there. They're right out of essentially like boot camp. So like, we're talking, they don't have postings. It's not, you don't have a regular, I think there's like 1 or 2 older like gentlemen who actually like are in charge, but most of the people who show up there are just there after they've finished their training before they actually get dispatched to their long-term locations. So we never see the same dude, barely ever. And it's like they don't take anything seriously, and they've always got something to prove. Right? Yeah, no, it was definitely experiment. And the same thing with our high school, which I guess kind of benefited us, but we were also like the guinea pig of the province. So anytime a new program was suggested or was being tried on the students, like when they came out with those stupid, it was like you had to come up with a portfolio and like a presentation thingy in order for you to graduate. That high school was the first one to put it into practice, to try it out. And they had anytime there was a new program, anytime there was some sort of new schooling thing that they wanted to test out, they did it in that school. And they would work out the kinks with our high school. I suspect that the mayor of that town, because I have a very poor opinion of that town, was probably getting kickbacks for accepting all of these trial things. Right? We were. But I mean, it was kind of fun because, like, at the same time, they would give us all these weird shit. Like, normally you hear schools being underfunded. That wasn't really the case with our high school. We had, like, decent computers lab stuff, and, like, they had a really nice band system. They even had, like, choir and stuff after school. I'm certain the teachers got paid fairly well. But, like, there was a couple kids who I'm certain their lives got fucked up by the curriculum because stuff that they tried just didn't work, and they did not do that to any other students. Like, what will a high school portfolio show? Jobs. Oh, wow. You understand the powerhouse of the cell. That could be a big... The portfolio was supposed to include things like how many hours you worked, projects you did, community service things you supplied, and things like that, is what I was explaining. I was just lucky that, yeah, 0 for me. I know, right? Because you're so busy going to freaking high school and getting grades. What? Sorry, ranting. What else about that town sucked? Oh yeah, the fucking music festival. Sorry, I'm swearing. I really hate the town. Every year in the summer, and you can probably start to guess where this is located, they have a country music festival, which, I mean, sounds great in practice, except that the only people who showed up to that festival were people who went to the campgrounds, aka they went there to have sex and do drugs. Nobody went there for the music. And we know this because a couple years after I moved out, they did a crackdown where if anyone was doing drugs and if they weren't like family-oriented stuff, they weren't allowed to attend the festival. And guess what? They rescinded that policy real quick because they were no longer getting an income because people weren't showing up. It's a shit town. I like to joke to say that that town is where dreams go to die, because like you're coming up from like the lower, more populous, bigger cities on your way elsewhere, and you get stuck in this like middle ground, and then you have no money to get out of it. Sex dreams, yeah, right. And to try to like promote the whole music festival thing, guess what they decided to do? They like commissioned to paint murals on the sides of all of these buildings, like these older buildings and stuff. And you think, okay, that's cool. They're gonna take the country vibe thing. They're gonna put like murals of like cowboys, and you'd think that'd be cool. No. And I can't even say they did like musicians like Johnny Cash or things like that. No, they just picked some modern, currently famous country musicians and painted not even like nice poses necessarily, but like massive face murals on these building walls. And it was just really unsettling. My town has a knifing problem right now. I hate it here. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the crime increase right now too is people are getting pretty desperate because, you know, things are not good financially for a lot of people. And generally, when they tried to fix it with face murals, yeah, they tried to fix it with face murals, and they're bad looking. They tried to fix your knifing problem with face murals. How is that sorry, how are face murals supposed to help with knifing? Did they just do like big smiley faces? They're judging. Oh no. Just like, it's like the scene from Quasimodo where like they're like looming and staring down at you ominously. Pretty faces on knives. Yes, I can't crime now. You're being watched. The eyes of Notre Dame. I can only crime when people aren't watching. I mean, that works if you're extremely religious. Maybe it'll remind you that God's watching, but if that's not the case, it's just paint on a wall and really not gonna do anything. Oh, that's funny. Most people have probably heard this, but if not, I still find it funny that that weird advertising thing they did where it's like you wouldn't download or you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't download a movie. It worked backwards because people didn't realize that they could pirate movies. So the moment they did, they're like, oh, we can go to sites and get movies for free, and then pirating went up, which is really funny to me. Yeah. Oh. Also, I know it was maintained that I would 100% download a car. I mean, nowadays with 3D printing technology, to hell with it, download a car. It'd probably make a better vehicle than the Cybertruck. At least it'll be waterproof. Future. The future is now. And you're just like waiting for it to print. They're 3D. I mean, admittedly, they're 3D printing houses now. They've got I mean, I'm not gonna diss on it because like in certain situations, 100% useful for people to get more housing in scenarios where they need housing. But like, if they've got this giant machine that's like hooked up to like, I don't know if it's cement or concrete or something like that, and it just sort of squeezes out this outline of like where the walls will be. Yeah, right. There's also, what was it? There was another company or system that they were testing, and it was like modular houses. What was it? They were shipping food, and I think this is ingenious. They were shipping food to places that had like food, water, medicine, clothes, that sort of stuff, to places that needed the aid. And the items, like the boxes that they were shipping them in, were designed to kind of Lego together so that they could make buildings out of them and make like shelters and stuff. And that's really cool. Minimum decent standard of living. I agree. I mean, like, I get making buildings quote unquote to code so that it's safe for people to live in, especially in scenarios where people might take advantage, build unsafe housing so that they can put it up for rent, and then the people who are living in those housing are then suffering from mold, threat of fire, things like that. I get that, but also at the same time, it's almost like housing policy has gotten so convoluted that people can't even build structures just to survive, and I don't know where the middle ground is. And houses are getting kind of, at least here in North America, it feels like houses are getting shittier built by the year. I remember some of my families up on the farm in, like, again, the little town where where I finished high school and where Hero 5th went from. Some of the houses there were still old log built. They're just like giant logs. Hard as shit to make ends meet, yeah. They were just old logs that were cut and then sort of stacked on each other with the, log house. Those things are still standing. Whereas you would look driving around and you see some of the old buildings that were like constructed in like the 50s, and that shit's falling apart. Those log houses that I remember were built by like my grandparents, so we're talking like practically 100 years ago now. Look at the McDonald's colors. Yeah, we are living in, what is it called? My brain's shutting down. Consumerist dystopia, I guess. And if everywhere. Yeah, dystopia. I don't quite get, like, millennials too, and we, I guess, are getting the shit on for the gray aesthetic, the gray, white, black aesthetic. Presumably the new houses don't have asbestos and won't spontaneously combust or something. That's what I mean. Like, I get there being housing standards to protect against things that you don't want housing to do. But I feel like there should be some assistance or way of, like, giving tax breaks to people who just need to build a shelter. Because I know there was an issue where a gentleman was trying to set up on his property, like, temporary smaller shelters, like they're about the size of like garden sheds and stuff for people to live in while they get on their feet, so they could also have like a postal address, because getting a job when you don't have an address is practically impossible, and you can't rent a post box if you don't have money, because they're not exactly cheap either. There's gotta be some like way to fix that, and some people can't get IDs either because of that situation. It's just you get stuck in a, yeah, exactly. But the problem is that it didn't, like, I think it broke something with the number of people living within like a domicile region, so they tore it all down. I don't know if they find him or not, but like that seems really messed up. Especially in the northern reaches of Canada, you can't like just set up shipping containers or things like that because you'll freeze to death. It's really freaking cold up here in the winter. Sadly, why you don't see a lot of homeless people anywhere except the big cities. They literally don't survive. Sad. I'd rather shit on my hometown than talk about this. For like half an hour overtime too. Hero 5th's cutting me off. It was fun talking. So much. This is gonna be a weird YouTube upload. Might need to cut it. I want to leave one random story. One last story. This is gonna be so off the cuff, random. So I knew an older gentleman. I used to play cribbage with him, and I loved it because he used to tell me stories from his childhood, and I could go into those. But one of the ones that, I'm gonna go to hell for laughing at this, but he was in the army, and when he was sent on a away mission, I forgot what it's called. Posted, there we go. He was posted in a region in like a warm climate with, we're talking like oceans and stuff like that. And he was going on about it, and he just randomly brought up the fact that they would get, I forgot what it was. It was a type of explosive that reacted with water. Probably, I don't know what it was. Can't remember what he called it. But he said that they would take pieces of it. Again, I'm going to hell for this, but they would take pieces of it and they would feed them to the seagulls. And the thing is, because seagulls and birds don't have saliva, what would happen is they would take these things, because they're just eating shit, you throw them, they would swallow them, they would fly off, and then they would explode in the air into a puff of feathers. And I'm going to hell for that, but that image is really funny to me. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm gonna cut it off there. Thank you everyone for joining me and for a nighttime thing. This man was old, so I'm assuming it was a different time. Probably like the 1940s. They said. Outstanding. He has other stories, but that's what I'm gonna share with right now. Anyways, everybody have a good night and good sleep, and we'll see you next Sunday. Sorry, Carrie, for traumatizing you. Night, night.